loyal followers who will be here early on.
Ah, there you go.
Yeah.
That helps.
Well, I work as an administrator, so I have to be kind of careful about this.
Oh,
And
I understand.
Just as a shout out, he's not here yet, but I think Kevin Mathewson might be joining us here pretty soon. I received this coffee mug from him. The gossip blogger, Wisconsin's favorite gossip blogger. So a little shout out to Kevin. Hopefully he can join us. Okay, I'm Johnny Walker Dread. Everybody I think here that's piled in probably knows me. I have around 300 videos on the Kyle Rittenhouse shooting. So if you're interested in the Kyle Rittenhouse deal and Dominic Black and also Chrystul Kizer, which we're going to be talking about a lot today, go to my channel, the Johnny Walker Dread Show, and check out my videos. I have a number of local lawyers, and hopefully you won't make the list. So no, I'm joking. You definitely are a reasonable man, but as you know it, there are some lawyers out there that make a lot of crazy stuff, and so this is a series dedicated to that. And also my Kyle Rittenhouse Dumb Arguments is another one that you might want to check out. And I know that you're surely aware that when these cases arise, people make a lot of dumb arguments about the law and stuff that they think.
It happens every time the Supreme Court releases an opinion. So yes.
That's right. Okay, so at any rate, I'm Johnny Walker Dread, and now why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hi, everybody. My name's Sean Martin. I'm an attorney. I'm actually licensed in Ohio. I'm not a Wisconsin licensed attorney. I started up my own channel, Potentially Criminal. I couldn't really think of a better, clever legal name than that. I just kind of cover criminal defense related things. I think that's probably the more interesting part of my practice. So I thought everybody'd like to hear what I have to say.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And I came across his channel looking over the Theodore Edgecomb deal, and we had a disagreement, but it's like you defended your your opinions with like sound legal reasoning,
yes,
which is a rarity. and well, and tell me if you don't find this, but when you go in and you watch a video, we're so primed to hearing dumb arguments and also hearing hypocritical, non-critical thinking stuff that we jump immediately assuming that the person, because they disagree with you, they must be some nut. And so you come in there and you're full, full bore fire and ice, right? You're gonna get in there and tell how this person is crazy. And then after a while you realize, oh, wait a minute. This actually guy, he knows a little bit about what's going on here. Does that ever happen to you?
That happens a lot. I mean, I'm guilty of it myself. I think I'll be fair to admit that. Watching even other attorneys, or if I'm starting to read something, if it's from a layperson, I might jump to a conclusion. But like I said, I'll jump to that conclusion with attorneys too. And then I get to the end and say, oh, wow, well, they actually did have a good reason. I disagreed with it. But yeah, I mean, I don't think any of us are immune to it. But you do tend to hear that a lot more from lay people. And by that, I mean people who don't have a legal education. But I would say with Kyle Rittenhouse alone, you saw a ton of legal minds. I mean, go on law Twitter and you'll see there was more garbage there than in a dump about Kyle Rittenhouse. So it's not just to the average person. I will say that.
Yeah, my dumb argument series. And, these are like things that people say that are not just like something I disagree with, but just plain dumb. I have 77 of them. A few of them are ones that are proposed by pro-Kyle people, but there's not many.
Yes.
Almost all of them are the anti-Kyles, and it ranges everywhere from he took the gun across state lines to, he didn't call 911, which, by the way, we're seeing in Edgecomb and Chrystul Kizer, they didn't call 911 either.
Yes.
And yet, the amazing thing about it to me is the hypocrisy in that they can take such firm stances on these things. But then when the next case comes around and the roles are switched, all of a sudden, it's no longer important. And we'll talk a lot about that. So what kind of cases are you most interested in right now? I know besides Edgecomb.
Right now, I was thinking about the Chandler Halverson one, but that was kind of boring. I mean, it's clear he did it. I think if they were smart, they would have put pressure on pointing the finger at the girlfriend. But I mean, that one was pretty obvious what happened.
Yeah.
One I be talking about coming up is Nicholas Cruz, and I think just because it's interesting that people are now seeing how a death penalty case works, where you have your two separate parts of the trial. In his case, which is very, very rare, he pled out to the death penalty offense. And now we're getting into the penalty phase of whether or not he should get the death penalty. So
Mhm.
that's a little different. They have to pick the jury solely for that. Normally, it's the jury that convicts you is the
Yeah.
jury who then tells you, "Hey, you're guilty. Your death penalty or life without parole." That one I think is going to be very interesting. Obviously, I don't think anybody disagrees that he did it or didn't do it, but I think that it's interesting that people get to see the sausage being made. Um, the
Hmm.
other one, is out of Texas. There's two of them out of Texas. It's the Chad Reed and Kyle Carruth shooting. It's the one where there was looks like a
Right.
custody dispute, and then he center punches the stepdad center punches real dad, and then there's a whole that one's going to be interesting how that shakes out. And then I think it actually might be in the same town. I don't really know Texas that well. The two shirtless guys in the alleyway with the box spring. Do you remember this one
I'm
at
not
all?
familiar with that one.
Okay,
No.
Abilene, Amarillo. I'm not really sure. Texas. Uh, the father and son have their neighbors, and I guess in this town they have the town is like a community dumpster. It's not huge, but it's bigger than a normal garbage can. You can throw junk in it, and the city will take it away. Well, neighbor A comes and throws a box spring out. Well, father and son say, they're not going to take it, and they throw it back in his yard. This goes back and forth a couple of times. Neighbor A comes back out and throws it in the dumpster. And at this point, neighbor A's threatened to beat the crap out of these guys. Do you care if I swear? I apologize.
No, it's okay. Yeah.
He threatens to beat the shit out of him, and he's a big guy. The father and son, I'll speak from a fat guy like me, obviously they get their ass kicked. So eventually, after he's threatened them the one time, they come out with guns, pistol and shotgun. He comes out with a bat that his wife or somebody else is holding. They have a big standoff. They're yelling at each other. There's some threats. And then at some point, there's threats and, I'm going to kill you. The older father who's holding a pistol right in front of him says, I doubt you'll do it. Take your swing if you think you're man enough. At some point, the neighbor A grabs a bat. That part's not on camera, and all we can see is him come off screen. And then as he comes back on screen, father shoots, and then neighbor A throws the bat at the dad, and then the son steps up with a shotgun and just unloads into the guy. Yeah, it's very interesting. Kind of the whole Jason Clareman thing. Is this really, were you willing to go to distance over this? And the other guy might be. Like, these guys got in a shootout over a box spring, and they're going to go to trial sometime. It got postponed. I don't know to when, but that's a very interesting one I'm looking forward to. And then Chrystul Kizer when that actually goes forward, but I don't know if that's going to get TV coverage that I'll be able to watch.
Actually, Kevin will know. Kevin has just joined the stream, and Kevin, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hey, how you doing? My name is Kevin Mathewson. I'm the editor of the Kenosha County Eye, KenoshaCountyEye.com, right here in beautiful southeastern Wisconsin, Kenosha.
Kevin, you're a little bit low on the. You might just get in closer to the microphone, or you might have.
Sure. Let me boost this up a little bit. Is this a little better?
There, that's good. There you go. Okay. Well, we heard you. It was just a little bit faint.
Okay. So, Chrystul Kizer, actually, I just got a notification yesterday. They have scheduled oral arguments in her Supreme Court case. So,
okay. Well, Kevin, let me stop you a second here. Are you on the right microphone?
Hold on. Let me get my copy. Hold on.
Because it's when it gets loud, it kind of doesn't sound too good. Distorts a little.
How's this? Is this better or no?
Yeah, that's good. Okay, good.
Okay. Should have tested that first. So the Supreme Court is going to hear the Chrystul Kizer interlocutory appeal. We talked about that, John. You remember? So it's an interlocutory appeal, which means I'm sure the lawyer knows what that means. So it means it's kind of
Yeah.
putting the
Mhm.
court case at a standstill until the Supreme Court decides.
What are they appealing, if I may ask?
So in Wisconsin, there is a statute that allows victims of human trafficking or
Oh, that's the thing they were arguing that
Yeah.
got denied.
Oh,
Okay.
Kevin, your microphone is still breaking up when you get in, when it gets to the higher things deals. But at any rate, while you're working on that, I can, fill in the audience on it. But she's claiming an affirmative defense centered on sex trafficking. She's not really
Okay,
claiming
reset the
self-defense.
I reset the microphone. Is this better now?
What do you think?
What the? It should be
It-
working. What did I do wrong here? Hold
It's
on.
kind of low and cutting in and out.
Yeah, same.
All right, testing.
Ugh. Yeah, I don't know.
I'm just gonna restart, and I'll be back in a minute.
Okay,
I'm gonna
good enough.
restart.
I mean, it's not. We can follow it, but it's distorting out a little bit, and you may not like the result when you hear it.
No, I got a sexy voice, and I want people to hear it in the raw. I'll be back.
Okay. All right. So, at any rate, I don't know if those of you who don't know Kevin Mathewson, he said he is the editor of the Kenosha County Eye. He's also the commander of the Kenosha Guard, the one that put out the note on Facebook that got a lot of people going to the Kenosha protests armed with rifles and things like that. Kyle not being one of them. That was one of the claims, was that Kenosha was that Kyle read his call to arms and showed up, but that's not true. At any rate, he probably knows more about the Chrystul Kizer case and the Kyle Rittenhouse case than any person other than somebody that's actually one of the attorneys involved in the actual case. So he's in the courtroom every day. He knows almost everybody, and I would love to ask for him to tell you, but he is right now suing Binger and Krause. He and the prosecutors are mortal enemies.
What's he
So-
suing? Well, I'll wait to hear from him, but I didn't know that. That's good.
Yeah. Well, I'll let him talk about it. But so at any rate, he is extraordinarily knowledgeable about pretty much everything going on when it comes to the Kenosha shootings, and he's fed me a lot of information that I've used for my shows. So I'm very indebted to him for the information. But so yeah, the Chrystul Kizer case, we're going to talk about that one today. That one is going to be wild if this thing goes to trial, and unless she takes a plea, this case could approach that of Kyle Rittenhouse. And the reason why I say that is because people are going to draw the parallels between her case and Kyle's, and they're going to
I think so.
her. Oh yeah, I mean, well, they're already doing it. I mean, it's
Mhm.
been going on a while, but once it goes to trial and the average person hears about it, especially those who have very strong political opinions,
Mhm.
it's going to go crazy. The other thing that is going to be different is, I'm sorry, the one reason why it's going to be almost one-sided is there's not a real Second Amendment issue here. And
Mhm.
so a lot of the people who, latched on to Kyle Rittenhouse for political reasons, because, he's a patriot, he is a Second Amendmenter and all that kind of stuff, which were
Mhm.
really not that totally true. They're not going to have that much interest in this. So it's only going to be those who want her released. And so it's just going to
Yes.
be wild. And so get ready for it. And she's in trouble. I'll tell you right now, I think she's in some trouble, but we'll see. We'll talk about that.
Mhm.
But
Well, yeah, no, and I think another thing I think that helps her going forward as far as popular support, after everybody watched the trial of Kyle, I think a lot of people got their eyes open to how far a prosecution will go.
mhm.
And if they did it to Kyle in front of the world, what do they do when nobody's watching? And no, am I going to sit here and tell you that every prosecutor's office is corrupt? No. Is every prosecutor corrupt? No. Have I dealt with some prosecutors who did things I didn't agree with? Yes. Have I dealt with one that has done something rather unseemly? Yes, not to that level, and I was able to take care of it favorably for my client. But watching that case and the fact that Binger did not get disciplined or Krause didn't get disciplined and or fired, I can tell you, I worked as a prosecutor for about 2 years. if I would have done that, I'd be getting ready to dust off my resume. I'll just put it like that.
Mhm.
I just that was amazing to see that happen, and to see that there was no discipline, and that the DA himself, who I believe he's prosecuting Chrystul Kizer personally, that didn't have any comments on that. Yeah, they shouldn't have done that, or he didn't approve of it. I think that helps Chrystul a lot, because I do think it shows, and I don't like to disparage an entire office, but if they're willing to put up with that kind of nonsense, I can't imagine, like, what else, what are they hiding on this one? What is out
Okay.
there that we don't know about?
Well, I think you offended Kevin greatly when you said that, made disparaging remarks about the prosecution here in the Chrystul Kizer case, the DA's office. Kevin, go in there and defend their honor.
Oh, me?
And your microphone is still not sounding good. But
Are you kidding me? What is the freaking problem here? It's still crappy, huh?
okay, I think we can deal with that. Okay, go ahead and try.
You can hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Is it quiet?
Just
Or is it distorted?
Just
or
don't elevate your voice up much.
That's so bizarre. I'll have to figure out what the hell is going on.
Okay, but you're sounding okay now.
So you can hear me okay?
Yeah, that's fine. As long as you keep it right around that range of vocals, decibels, we're good.
It's probably Kraus is hacking our stream or something.
He's using Handbrake.
Yeah, so Chrystul Kizer, the judge ruled that she could not use the affirmative defense of being the victim of sex trafficking. Her lawyers appealed that, and it was overturned at the appellate court level. So the appellate court said, no, the judge erred. She can use that. So then, of course, Mike Gravely appealed to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said, we'll hear it, and they just scheduled oral arguments, I believe, for March 1st at 9:45. So I know the Wisconsin Supreme Court might expedite a decision on something like this in an interlocutory sense, but they've been known to take up to a year or more to decide cases. So it's really unknown at this time when we'll get a trial date. It could be the summer, or it could be the fall.
Yeah. Now he mentioned about the two prosecutors in the Kyle Rittenhouse case not facing any accountability. Could you update us on that? Because I believe that you know some information about the accountability of those two going forward.
Yeah. So I made a complaint to the potentially criminal. Do you go by a first name or what?
Sean.
Sean.
Yeah.
So Sean, I submitted a complaint with the Office of Lawyer Regulation, which in Wisconsin is the lawyer cops, and if they make a finding, they submit it to the Supreme Court, and Supreme Court has final say if somebody loses their license or they're barred from prosecuting cases. But low-level discipline, the Office of Lawyer Regulation can issue unilaterally, right? So my main complaint was that Binger put Gage Grosskreutz up to false testimony. So Gage Grosskreutz, days after the shooting, we're talking late August, told WISN 12, I believe was the news channel out of Milwaukee, that he was licensed legally to carry a concealed weapon. And I'm thinking, how is that the case? I mean, this guy's got a really bad background, right? Mm-hmm. So at trial, he testified. Binger asked him, well, isn't it true that you had a valid concealed carry, after he was admitting that he had a gun on him? And Gage says yes, right? Well, I mean, that's just like saying you have a driver's license if you still have the physical card. I mean, that physical card doesn't mean anything if you don't have the valid status to back it up in the computer system in the DMV. So anyways, he said, yeah, I have a concealed carry. And then Binger says, well, had it been expired? Which is a leading question, so we knew that he knew the answer to that question before he asked it. And Gage says yes. And then Binger says, had you renewed it? And Grosskreutz says, no, I had not renewed it. Which was, Binger knew or should have known that it was not expired, but in fact it was suspended. It was terminated because this new Attorney General here in Kenosha is, and to his credit, I think this is a good thing that he's doing. Is he's going through all these people like Gage who are given these permits because state law, if you're involved in any type of domestic conviction, whether it be disorderly conduct, domestic, battery, domestic, you lose your right to carry a gun at all, let alone concealed. So in Gage's case, he was convicted of domestic battery for beating up actually his grandma, believe it or not. So they went and they revoked his license. So he told the whole world on the stand that it was expired. But he must have forgotten that he sent me a copy of his CCW license, which had it expiring in 2024. So
I've seen that picture.
Yep. So either that's a forged CCW license, which that's a crime, a serious crime, or he lied under oath. One of them has to be true. So I filed a complaint with the Department of Justice, and I said this guy either fraudulently forged a CCW license or he lied on the stand. And I finally got a letter back a couple days ago, Johnny. It says, we respectfully decline to investigate your claims. Okay. It's a local issue that District Attorney Gravely should look into, right? So I also made that same complaint to the Office of Lawyer Regulation, and in Wisconsin here, where are you licensed, Sean?
Ohio.
Ohio. Okay, so in Wisconsin, and I'm sure it's the same in Ohio, as an attorney, if you put somebody up to testimony you know to be false, it's considered an ethical violation.
Oh, yes, yes.
So if your client tells you, yeah, I shot the damn bastard, and then they go on the stand and they say, no, I didn't shoot him, I loved him, in Wisconsin, you'd have to recuse yourself. You don't have to tell the judge, oh, no, my client's lying, he really did shoot him, because that's violating attorney-client, but that attorney would then have to recuse, and he'd have to get a new attorney. So that was my complaint and basis for my complaint against Binger for putting somebody up to false testimony. And the OLR told me, your complaint is being combined with another complaint. So we'll keep you advised on what we do. And so I responded, and I said, I don't believe you that you received a complaint identical to mine. So then finally I got a letter from the director of the OLR, who's a former U.S. attorney, where he said, basically, we've gotten so many complaints about the Kyle Rittenhouse prosecution that we're lumping all of them into one giant investigation. We're basically going to investigate the Rittenhouse prosecution from day one till the final day, right? So, which is kind of odd to me because, like, my complaint was a very specific complaint, something that could be overlooked if you don't know the underlying facts. So, yeah. So it's just an interesting thing, but. So technically, it's still an open case. They gave me the case number. So they assign each complaint to the Office of Lawyer Regulation. You know, the first 2 digits is the year, and then, you know, the final few digits are, you know, the identifier, the serial number, if you will, of the complaint. So, so we'll find out soon, hopefully, if there will be any accountability. I know from so. I asked District Attorney Mike Gravely for a copy of any internal investigations into these attorneys' conduct. And that was, I want to say, a month ago, and he didn't even respond to me. So I might have to sue him for a third time. And in Wisconsin, if you do not answer a public records request, then you can petition for, the court for a writ of mandamus. And I've done that twice against the district attorney's office. I've done it against the sheriff's department. I've won every one I've ever filed, so they know that I don't bluff. So that's it's not necessarily. We don't necessarily know that they're not going to be held accountable, although I suspect they will not be. Yeah, as you know, Sean, I mean, there's so much immunity for prosecutors. There's so much, exemptions where, unless you can prove that they had actual malice and intentional problems, it's really hard for them to be held accountable, unfortunately.
You're right, and it's not even just like prosecutorial immunity. It's just is the governing authority, your disciplining authority, really going to find that prosecutor? I mean, think about all the stories you hear about. Oh, evidence got suppressed for 20 years, and what happens? Nothing usually. I mean, very rarely does anything ever happen. I mean, Mike Nifong, the guy in the Duke lacrosse case, is about the only one where a corrupt prosecutor got their comeuppance.
Mm-hmm. By the way, I did a highlight Nathan DeBruin, who's in the chat. I don't know if you know who Nathan DeBruin is, Sean, but he was the photo chat.
I've watched a lot. He had Cruz tried to have him Cruz tried to suborn perjury through him, I think, based on the way Nathan testified about, you guys are telling me to say this was somebody else when he testified at Kyle's trial. I think, Cruz should be suffering for that. I still think to this day, and part of the reason why I'm freely willing to talk shit about those two, I'll never practice in front of them. I understand there's a reason why Richards maybe held his tongue a little bit because he has to go back to those guys with his other cases. Right. But I think Cruz could, I guarantee it, he was messing with those video exhibits. I guarantee you we don't have what he touched originally.
Right. So Nathan has a little update. I think this is concerning the Zeminski trial. It looks like he's going to be called up as a witness on that. And I think that's the 31st. Is that right?
So the 31st will be jury selection.
Oh, that's right.
Depending on how quickly they get jury selection done, sometimes they do openings in the afternoon. Sometimes they'll do openings the following day.
Okay. All right. So Chrystul, Kizer
I'm sorry, Kevin, is Binger doing Zeminski?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, he is.
Yeah, and is it the same judge?
It is the same judge.
Yeah. Why did Zeminski allow that to happen? You're in Wisconsin? You're allowed to punt the first judge you come across.
Yeah, you can punt.
Well, it's interesting. You can do that.
Yeah, you can substitute. And if you Google Bruce Schroeder, Judge Bruce Schroeder, there's an article about him. I want to say maybe 15 years ago, where he was the most subbed on judge in the state because he was very harsh in his sentencing. So he got subbed on something like 1,000 times in a year or something.
Jeez.
And in Wisconsin, you only get one substitution. So if you don't like the judge and you sub, you're stuck with that second judge. So there was actually an inter-county agreement between between Kenosha County and Racine County, which is just north of us, that if they had a judge that was similarly subbed upon. So if you sub on Schrader, you get this harsh sentencer out of Racine. If you sub on this harsh sentencer in Racine, you get Bruce Schroeder. Kind of a way to just stick it to the defendant, right? The defendants. Yeah.
I wish we had that rule in Ohio.
Yeah. So you can't sub, huh?
No. The only time I practiced in one county when I first got out of law school, the prosecutor, like the county prosecutor, her husband was one of the 10 common pleas judges in this county. So if you got assigned to him, you could either agree to waive that conflict of interest in writing, or if you didn't want to do that, you could then be assigned to a different judge in the courthouse. That's the only time I ever had that option of telling my client they could choose their judge.
But it just seems bizarre to me because Zeminski has to know that of all the judges he would be facing, the worst one would be Bruce Schroeder. But
well, yeah, I mean,
also Judge Schroeder knows the most about this entire situation at this point.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So it's kind of strange. It's too late now, though, isn't it?
Right. Yeah. You have, I think, 20 days from your initial appearance, I want to say. Don't quote me on that, but it's something like that. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, he missed his chance. And the thing about Schrader is he's a very fair trial judge. So if you're going to trial, he's the judge you want. Because he's not a state-friendly judge. He's not a defense-friendly judge. does his best to be very neutral, which he should be. He shouldn't favor either side, and really a tie should go to the defendant, and that's been always my view. If there's ever a tie, like in baseball, the tie goes to the runner. In court, the tie should go to the defendant, right? Because the burden of proof is on the prosecution.
Exactly.
So he's got a good judge for his trial. The problem is that Judge Schroeder has been very vocal about his disdain for these thugs that burned our city down. And this is one of those thugs who burned our city down. And this guy has a terrible, violent past. He's got many, many, many arrests for felony, but no felony convictions. They've all been pled down to misdemeanors between Kenosha and Racine counties with his these progressive prosecutors we have. They just want to plead everything down. You know, give him a second chance, give him a 12th chance, a 13th chance, a 14th chance. Yeah, he's not a felon, which is sad. But remember, with Zeminski, Kenosha police did a wonderful job of tracking him and his wife down to figure out who they were, and they actually asked the DA. It was a criminal referral to the DA's office for second-degree reckless endangerment, which is the typical charge for shooting a gun up in the air. And I would say this is aggravating circumstances because it's during a freaking riot, for crying out loud.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if on New Year's Eve, if you shoot a gun up in the air at midnight, you got to know that you'll be found accountable if you get caught, right?
Sure.
But you're probably not going to be thrown in jail, right? But when you shoot a gun in the air during a violent riot, that's a little different. Mm-hmm. So the Kenosha police asked to charge him with a felony arson, felony second-degree reckless endangerment, obstruction, resisting, all these charges, and Gravely picked one out of there, disorderly conduct, out of all those charges. Well, I had kind of notified the public about this, and he got a lot of feedback, a lot of flack from the community. And so he's like, all right, we'll charge him with arson of a non-building too, which is a felony. So he's going to trial on that felony. I believe very strongly he will be convicted of this felony. I hear his interrogation video is absolutely brilliant theater. It's going to be fun to watch because I think he may have cried or he was just an idiot like you'd imagine.
Oh,
right?
I won't miss that.
So,
well, okay. I'll just say one thing though. You mentioned that the police did an excellent job of identifying him. I think that the person who identified him was a YouTube blogger, and he worked with Neil Kearney of V Radio, who's been on this show many, many times, to actually inform the prosecution who he was. So I'm not sure if it was the police or it was these bloggers that did it. Maybe you know.
And we'll find out. Yeah, I don't know. But we will certainly find out at trial. The judge gave me permission to photograph the trial, so I'll be there hopefully every day.
Oh, cool.
Hopefully get a couple good, in a previous life, I was a wedding photographer. I've been doing that for 13, 14 years now. But yeah, so I got good cameras. I'm pretty good at taking pictures. I'll get pictures of the scumbag, pictures of, photo chat and all the other cool witnesses that'll be there.
Okay.
Yeah, it'll be interesting.
Okay, before we move on, I would like to go ahead and talk about Chrystul because that's kind of what everybody was here for. But I would like to mention that you have a really good article on the Kenosha County Eye on Judge Schroeder and his rulings, past couple of rulings, which put him in a pretty good light here. I mean, it turns out I think a lot of people have misunderstood his motives and everything. You want to just give me a real brief rundown of what that article is about?
So you're talking about the tale of two defendants?
Yeah, exactly.
So we had this gentleman in the city of Kenosha who got in an argument with a black woman over. She just put the shopping cart like in the handicapped area and walked to her car. Something we've all probably done before. I've done it. We've all done it. It's cold out or you just got somewhere to go. So she did this, and the guy walked by, a 70-year-old man walked by her, according to court documents, and said something like, "You lazy asshole, put the cart away," or something like that. Mm-hmm. She's alleging he used a racial slur. He says he did not. The judge found him guilty. He then got in his car and she kept screaming at him, and he kind of juked her out. He drove his car towards her, but then stopped, far enough away where if he wanted to run her over, he could have. But nice coffee mug there, Johnny. So anyways, Kenosha's favorite gossip blogger, the Kenosha County Eye. So anyways, the Kenosha police came. They gave this guy 2 citations, and in Wisconsin, if you get a citation, it's non-criminal. It's an ordinance violation. One was for reckless driving. One was for disorderly conduct. I think the fines would have been about maybe $1,200 for both. That was that, right? Well, some guy recorded this woman screaming at this black woman screaming at this white 78-year-old man, and it went viral on Facebook, right? So Gravely saw it, and he just seized the opportunity because, he's this progressive far left prosecutor who, you know what, I'm going to intervene in this. So he threw out Kenosha Police's case, the municipal case. He just threw it out, unilaterally decided without a criminal referral to charge this guy with disorderly conduct criminal and negligent use of a vehicle. Okay, those are both misdemeanors. But what he did was and this is very rare, I haven't seen it in years in Kenosha, but he put a modifier on both called hate crime modifier, which the hate crime modifier actually increases certain misdemeanors to a felony. In this case, the negligent use of a vehicle was increased to a felony with the maximum. I think he could have gotten 4 years maximum, or be somewhere between 2 and 4 years. So he went to court, he went to trial, he did a bench trial. Judge Schroeder found him guilty of both misdemeanors along with the enhancers of hate crime because there was 3 witnesses that said he dropped the N-bomb. And so fast forward to yesterday was his sentencing. And now he's 80 years old because it took 2 years to get through the court process. So this 80-year-old man who has health problems is in court for his sentence, and DA Gravely, this is the boss. He's the elected district attorney who oversees Binger and Kraus and a bunch of other prosecutors. There's some good prosecutors in the office, not many. So he sat there and asked the judge to incarcerate this 80-year-old man who had no criminal history.
Are you fucking serious?
Yep. So he asked and the judge was so pissed off by this outrageous recommendation that he basically brought up another case on his docket, which in Wisconsin there's case law that says if you bring up another case as a judge during a hearing, you have to recuse. So the judge says, look, I'm bringing up this case because it's so important for me, and I'm going to have to recuse, but Gravely, you have another case in front of me where this guy called a woman N-word whore, a black whore, Black Lives Matters, sucks, F you, F black people, F N-words. I mean, way more egregious than, put your card away N-word, right? And this guy got charged by Gravely with just disorderly conduct, misdemeanor, no hate crime enhancers whatsoever. And this is a guy with tattoos on his face. This is a guy who's got gang involvement. He has 14 prior criminal convictions, many of which are felonies. He just got out of the joint like a couple weeks before, him banging on the neighbor's door, calling them all N-words, right? This is a dangerous, bad dude who's in his 30s or whatever. And Gravely asked the judge to plead it down to a citation, a non-criminal citation that has 0 chance of probation or jail. It's just a fine. It's non-criminal, doesn't go on his record. Gravely asked for a citation, and the judge says, no. Are you kidding me? You charged this case out, now you want to give him a ticket? He said no. So he said no to a plea deal, which is very rare in Kenosha, as I'm sure it is Ohio or Texas.
Yeah.
Or I'm sorry, Oklahoma. I'm sure. Johnny just seems like a Texas guy, but he's an Oklahoma guy. So he said, look, I get defendants here every day that hurt people with a knife, shoot people with a gun. You recommend probation. And in this case, we have an 80-year-old man who's sick, and you want to send him to jail. He said it's just absolutely outrageous. So he highlighted the differences in how defendants are treated in Kenosha County by the DA's office. And in this case, it was political. This video went viral on Facebook. And so he wanted to get involved. He wanted to be the big savior of, the woke culture. He wanted to make sure he punished this. He asked to put him in prison, for crying out loud. And the judge says, that's just absolutely crazy. Not going to do it. And sentenced the man to 2 years in probation and $10,000 fine. So even the judges get the gist here that this prosecutor's office is just systemically corrupt, not fair. The district attorney's office does not have to be neutral. They're not the neutral party, right? The judge is the neutral party. They want to advocate for putting people in jail, and I get that. But advocate for violent people to go to jail. Not people who use their get upset. Old people, they get stuck in their ways, and sometimes they get pissed off, because they've seen the same shit, for 80 years, and you got to give them some grace. So yeah, even the judges in Kenosha are starting to see, and Judge Schrader, he's more professional than to say what I'm saying, is that the DA's office is corrupt. They use politics and emotion to make their decisions, not sound logic and reason. So he doesn't say that, but I'm not afraid to. And so it's very interesting. So we'll see what happens with Chrystul Kizer. I mean, I don't know how you can object to letting the jury decide. Why not give the jury more options? It's always better when they have more options, in my opinion. And all you're saying is you're allowing the jury to decide if her victimization caused her to kill this dude. And we knew that this guy was a disgusting pedophile who had thousands and thousands of videos and photos of underage children. I think 12 of these children had confirmed identities from the Center for Missing and Exploited Children. So they knew who these victims were. And all these underage women that he raped, he took videos of them. So he made his own child pornography. And you know what? I hate to say this, but the three men sitting here in this live, we don't know what it's like to be a 15-year-old girl that's used for sex and trafficked for their bodies. So we never know how we would react in that situation. Maybe we would want to go kill the bastard.
Well, yeah. And my concern about this is from a legal standpoint, and that is that the affirmative defense that she is trying to use, but basically says that if you can tie the crime, the alleged crime, to sex trafficking, in other words, there's a strong nexus between the two, then you can use that as a defense. To me, this looks like a license to kill. And that is, I have been sex trafficked. I have this guy who's my pimp. Okay. I don't like him. He's taking advantage of me. I can shoot him and get away with it, because self-defense, you are not allowed, strict self-defense, you're not allowed to take revenge.
That's correct.
Right. Once the threat is over.
And you're not allowed to do like head him off at the pass. In other words, I think he might kill me later on. I better kill him now.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You're not allowed to do that either. There's a sort of imminence that you have to apply here, but that doesn't seem to be the case here at all. And I'm worried about this being like just, again, a license to kill. What do you think? I mean, Sean?
I mean, license to kill maybe, but when you think about it, that person's going to have to come in and say, yeah, I was being trafficked, and they're going to have to show they were in a trafficking situation. I mean, Chrystul's situation, from what I've read, goes back years and years and years with this guy. I mean, it was an ongoing thing, so it wasn't just one day or one night. This was years and years of abuse. So, yeah, in some instance, I could see where you're going with this fear that people could use it down the road, but you have to show that sex trafficking situation. And also, even though I'm a defense attorney, from a public policy standpoint, if women being trafficked started shooting their pimps, I mean, that's not necessarily, I mean, public policy wise, is that really bad? Yeah, we don't want people killing each other, but if that's who's getting killed, that's who's getting killed.
Well, but then again, another thing that concerns me is that if this is going to get extended beyond sex trafficking, what about the kid that bullies you at school? Is
Well,
he
I don't-
also not
well-
putting you in maybe through years and years of extreme stress and stuff? What about abusive parents?
Well, I understand where you're going to, but it sounds like from what I read in reading the statute, it's clearly about trafficking, though.
Well,
So it's
not
not-
right now. It is sure.
Oh,
But I'm just
could it
saying-
be modified? Yeah, but when you think about it, as far as like getting bullied or being abused, you start getting to like the battered spouse territory where it doesn't. The way the battered spouse defenses work, it's not a complete affirmative defense. It lessens what you're facing. So when the women have brought that up, they don't necessarily walk free. They just end up being convicted of manslaughter or something lesser. So it's not as though they're going to be using this just to. I could see a abusive parents thing, or I mean, maybe a bullying thing. I don't know.
Well,
I see it being more of a imperfect defense that allows you to just not go to prison for the rest of your life.
Well, and the thing about it, I would ask is that if you have a kid
good thought,
who
by
is
the way.
being abused by his parents, okay, he's trapped. I mean, just like a sexual assault victim is trapped as well. I would suggest to you that he's trapped even to a greater extent.
Well, yeah.
Because he legally cannot even leave the house.
And if he runs away, the police will bring him back.
Exactly. So if he is being abused, and that could be, it could be sexual abuse, but it could just be just really nasty parents, right? It could be verbal abuse. It could be like physical abuse. How would that be different, or how would it be not just as extreme in terms of the situation he's facing versus a girl who's being sex trafficked?
I mean, I agree with you in that sense that they can't leave, but I do think I guess I'd have to argue in opposition. If you're being abused, you can get children's services. There are things that can get involved that will look into things, because I think it's sex trafficking. I don't know if you've watched the Surviving R. Kelly series. So it's the families of the girls that R. Kelly's been abusing, allegedly. I guess I still have to say that because he hasn't really been sentenced yet. So when they go, they call the police, and the police just, all they can do really is knock on the door and say, "Hey, does so and so live here?" "Yeah, she's here." "Oh, she says she's doing fine." That's it. When there's allegations of child abuse and things going on, the police can get a little more involved. The children's services, they have the right to talk to the child. They have the right to, a lot of states, they can get warrants to inspect and look what's going on. So I think there's a bit of a difference there. And also, I think from the aspect of children, a lot of kids will say, "Yeah, I had real shitty parents," or "They abused me." But were they really abusive? I mean, were they just crappy parents, or were they really criminal? And I think it's different, because when you're being trafficked, there is no, "Oh, well, my boyfriend was he loved me hard." No, he trafficked you. I don't think there's really a.
Well, I don't
Different
think
mindset.
that
I can't
necessarily
remember
the
the
fact
mindset.
that she was trafficked is a given here. That's what she's claiming. I don't think the prosecution's admitting to that. They're in their view, this was his girlfriend. And basically, and I'm just going to give you the prosecution side of things. And,
Sure,
and believe me, I'm not saying that they're
I'm
right,
not.
but go ahead.
Oh yeah, I'm not. But I think that if there's not trafficking, he's like a 30-some-year-old guy who's got a 15-year-old girlfriend.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Yeah,
But trafficking is but keep in mind that the affirmative defense is specific to trafficking. So he would have to be essentially selling her on the market. And the prosecution is saying that there's no evidence of that. They may be wrong. And again, this is Gravely, so who knows what's going on there. But I would suggest that the narrative that that she was being sexually trafficked is a fact of the case may not be true. To me, it comes across as she was his girlfriend, and whether she was being trafficked or not is not clear. But this was, I think, for the longest time, I think that she was in a consensual relationship with him, even though we all know that that is illegal, and you can't use that as an excuse. But I think she's trying to play it that she was essentially forced into this kind of deal. I think that she thought that he was her boyfriend.
So obviously, here's the thing: is we have the defendant has the presumption of innocence, and in this case, we haven't heard any of the evidence. No jury has been seated. There's been no evidence. We just have a charging document where the DA says, "This is what we think happened." So that's why, just based on what I know, if I was on the jury right now, I would say guilty, even if the affirmative defense was on the table, because according to what the prosecutors are saying, is she was safe. She was the one driving to this guy's house to give her some booty and get paid, right? So she was driving. There was no force alleged. There was no, imprisonment or unlawful restraint alleged. So if all that is true, what the prosecution is saying, as a juror, I'm going to say guilty, withstanding the affirmative defense, because she didn't need to kill him. She could have got the police involved, and they, eventually he was going to get caught. And he was caught. He was caught something like 3 weeks before he got killed. So if the DA's office sat on those charges for 3 weeks, they let the guy go on a summons and complaint. I mean, they had evidence of hundreds of felonies that would have put him in life for 20, 30 life sentences. And they let him slip between her fingers. And then once he got killed, gravely said, "Oh, we were just about to charge him the next day. We promise." No, bullshit. So in this case, I think since there's been no evidence heard yet, why, Judge Schrader says this all the time, and maybe it's an old law, gimmick or whatever, not gimmick, but maybe it's an old saying that they use in lawyer talk. But he says, me as the judge, I'm a lawyer, I've got my life experience, but I will never be smarter than 12 members of the community. He always says that. The jury is smarter than me, right? Mm-hmm. So giving the jury the power to either say guilty, or not guilty by way of she was sex trafficked. What harm can come by giving them more choice, especially when you're of the understanding that they are smarter than a judge, right? So in this case, I think the Supreme Court is going to reject this. They're not going to allow Chrystul to use this affirmative defense, and she's going to go to prison for the rest of her life. I think that's the reality of the thing. And I think even if the Supreme Court allows her to use this affirmative defense, I think she's still going to prison, because based on what the DA's office is saying, I mean, she planned this. She got a gun. She stole his car. She was riding around in his car, taking selfies and videos on Facebook saying, "Hey, look, check out my new ride." And, fuck that guy. I killed him, So, I mean, if somebody breaks into my house and they're approaching my daughter's room and I shoot him in the back of the head, that's a fair shot every day, right? Mm-hmm. But if he then sees me and leaves and I chase him down the road and he gets away, and then the next day I see him at Pick and Save and I shoot him in the head, of course I'm going to prison. There's no longer that imminent threat. It's too far in length and proximity of time. There was no need to shoot him. I could have called the police. So in this case, I think either way, she's going to end up in prison for the rest of her life, and probably rightfully so. I mean, this was not a model citizen. I mean, she had already been a felon by age, I think, 15 for hijacking, what do they call it, carjacking or something like that, or being in possession of a stolen car or something. So I mean, this is not.
Did she lead the police on a chase?
I don't remember exactly. Yeah. I have that somewhere. Mm-hmm. But the bottom line is she made a bad choice. But I think I side, with the Court of Appeals in saying she has a right to make that defense to the jury. Whether they buy it or not will be up to the evidence that she shows, and is believed, and the evidence that the DA puts up and they believe. I don't see the harm in allowing the jury that one extra option. That's where I stand on that. But I think she's probably guilty and she'll go to prison.
Sean, what do you think?
I mean, I think you're right. At the very least, she should be able to present the defense, because if the prosecution can show, hey, this is complete smoke and mirrors, then let them do it. I mean, if they really can get away, like if they can show she's lying, by all means, go ahead. But as far as I know, the one comment that somebody had posted, it's very much like when you hear about women in battered, or even men who are in domestic violence situations. well, why didn't you just leave? Uh, I will say I worked initially at a law school as a public defender, and I did as much as I think a lot of the things they tried to teach us about, as far as some of the trainings I went to, I thought were a little nonsensical or a little leaning one way or another politically. The ones about domestic violence and the ones about women, sex trafficking, it's not as simple as, oh, I'm just leaving. Like, your life has been kind of thrown into a blender. I mean, for a lot of it's oh, what's the name of the one girl? She got kidnapped in Utah and she was gone for like a year
Oh
by
yeah,
some
I can't
crazy guy.
remember.
You know what I'm talking about,
Yeah.
though. It was like a crazy cult thing, and she was out. She ran to get groceries for the guy, and somebody asked her, "Why'd you leave? Why didn't you just walk around and find the police?" I mean, it doesn't work that way. Like, you are mentally kind of fucked
Mhm.
up in those situations. It's not as simple as just, oh, well, I'm going to the cops. There's been conditioning, there's some dependency there, and yeah, I think she may have entered that initially as a willing participant, but I mean, let's be real. If she's 16 years old and he's 30 something, I'm sure it's not like the Cleavers and Leave It to Beaver every night in that house. So
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, I think that's just something to think about. It's not as simple as, oh, just leaving and running to the cops. When you're dealing with that, it's quite a bit there. And yeah, some of what she did afterwards, riding around in the car, it's just like Theodore Edgecomb. Enough of what she did after the fact makes it look like she isn't doing it right, and it kind of puts holes in her theory. But people react. The best thing I can tell you is, I've made this argument before in court to a jury. If you haven't been in that situation, you don't know how necessarily you're going to react. You like think how you'll handle it, but sometimes people react very weirdly, and killing your who you allege to be your sex trafficker. Yeah, I don't know what I would have done in that situation.
Yeah, I think that. Go
Go
ahead.
ahead.
I'm sorry, Kevin.
I was going to say we had a case. If it makes any difference, we had a case several years back, and the defendant was Donna Matthews. She was stalked and threatened by this guy who lived here in Kenosha, right? She moved, I think, to Hawaii, and this guy was no longer a threat to her, right? He was crazy. He stalked her and called her. I guess the evidence showed, but she moved away, and that was that. And I want to say like a long time had passed, and she drove back down. She flew to the mainland, drove to Chicago, waited till July 4th when the fireworks were going off, broke into his house and shot him as he sat in a chair, and then burned his house down. And she tried, her defense was, well, this guy, I was terrified of him. Well, the jury saw right through that and said, look, you were safe. You were in Hawaii. You could have called the police. You could have got a restraining order.
And
So
I
they
agree in that
rejected that.
situation.
Yeah, and they rejected that. But I think juries are smarter than, except like OJ and Taser, the Taser cop, Kim
Well,
Potter. I think
they
they kind of got that one wrong a little bit.
they were set up to fail.
Yeah, so sometimes juries get it wrong, but most of the time, juries do the right thing, and they didn't believe that, and they're not going to believe Chrystul Kizer's nonsense that was her only option to break into this, to go to this guy's house, sell sex to him, and then shoot him as he sat in a recliner, and then she burned his house down too. Or maybe I'm confusing
No,
something.
I'm pretty sure she burned his house down.
Yeah,
she
in
burned his house
fact,
down.
I'm sure that I read that they asked her, did you know if he was still alive when you set the house on fire? And that she said no. However, I have not been able to substantiate that. So wherever I saw it, it's no longer there. Maybe I'm wrong. I'd be interested to see what the interview says. But if she actually did say that, I think that the jury's going to grumble a little bit, because no matter what you think of him, setting the house on fire when you think he might still be alive is pretty. That's pretty hardcore.
It's funny because I made my prediction earlier what I think the Supreme Court is going to do. But I'm thinking they have a slight majority, a conservative majority, but it's all women except for one. So maybe you might have that one or two conservative women justices that might say, you know what, let's give this girl a chance. So maybe I'm gonna withhold opinion. Maybe they might allow her to use this. I don't think so, but if she doesn't have this affirmative defense, she's dead in the water. She killed him. She admitted to killing him.
Yeah, that's it.
She made disclosures. That's it. So it's not a whodunit. It's
The only thing she can hope for is jury nullification.
yeah, something. Maybe the jury will feel bad for her, but I don't know how much of this. If the and maybe Sean, you have a better estimation. How much of this victimization will be allowed in court if there is no affirmative defense? I mean, is the judge going to say, "Look, we're talking about what happened on this day"? I mean, I don't know. The rules of evidence.
That is, I mean, yeah. If there's no evidence of sex trafficking and what he did coming in, nothing. If that's not allowed, then there's no defense really she can raise. There's no mitigating factor. It's going to be very hard. Now, if I knew all the evidence, there might be some way you could be sneaky and cheeky about getting it in, bringing in certain witnesses. And, a lot of times you'll watch during a trial, a question will get asked, immediately objected to. But that was the sole goal of getting that question into the jury's mind because they all know the answer. But yeah, if this is done, then yeah, she's toast. And it depends on how she reacted when she interviewed with the police. She probably said a bunch of dumb shit in there. She told on herself, I guarantee it. So yeah, once I see that, I'll probably change my mind. But for right now, I'm still kind of on her side. But
this community is slightly over. So even though this county, Kenosha County, went for Trump in 2020 and 2016, bizarrely, it's still just over half liberal. So when we see other statewide elections, the county goes for Democrats. So that jury will either be 6-6, 7-5. There's a chance statistically that the jury will be just over half liberals, and But even in the Kyle Rittenhouse case, you had at least 4, 5, 6, 7 liberals on that jury, and it was unanimous, not guilty. So, I mean, I think that when it comes down to it, juries are able to put politics aside and do what they know is right. If Tom Binger was on that trial, he probably would have said not guilty. If he wasn't the prosecutor and this was some other county, because I think he knew in his heart that Kyle did not belong in prison. But
I don't know about that.
You think he's an idealist, huh?
I think he's a true believer. It's one thing to prosecute the case, and I prosecuted more than one case where I disagreed with it, but my boss said, "You're doing this." It wasn't unethical. I just disagreed with how we were applying the law. We applied the law within the bounds of the law, and I was involved in it.
Yep.
But Binger, he may have, if he just disagreed with something, that's fine. But the lengths he went on top of that, when he started going into the Fifth Amendment territory, when him and Cruz started messing with exhibits, just the way they handled everything, you wouldn't go that far if you were just kind of phoning it in.
Well, and for Binger though, and you probably have read this, but he has aspirations to be the DA somewhere. He ran in Racine, got his ass kicked by really another Democrat, but she just happened to run as a Republican. Sheriff Clark, right? He was the black sheriff. He always ran as a Democrat, but he was more conservative probably than 99% of the population. Just real conservative. Run. Right. So he knew how he had to run to win. Same thing in Racine. You have this big, fat, ugly pig of a woman named Patricia Hansen, who's the DA, and she won for 2 reasons. One, because she put the R in front of her name. 2 is because her family name. But she is as liberally progressive as they come. Letting all these terrible, violent criminals off with misdemeanors and tickets, and it's gross. But Binger wants to be DA someday. He wants to be, maybe he'll want to run for judge. So he'll really
some hair.
Yeah, he was really hoping for a win in this case so that he could springboard. he could have done these Good Morning Americas and CNN. He claims it was his decision to say no. My gut tells me his boss, Mike Gravely, said, no, I don't want you going on the national media. I don't want you doing it. I don't want you to bring more shame to me. So that's my guess. But I mean, he could have got a job at, MSNBC or CNN as some kind of political correspondent. They know, that he's a tried and true bleeding heart liberal. But I think, you might be right. But he wanted to win this, I think, for personal gain. It was part of it.
Yeah, I have a question. Since Gravely is the one that's going to be prosecuting Chrystul, what kind of change in style are we going to see between the two? And are we going to see shenanigans?
So I hate to give the guy credit, but Michael Gravely is the best trial prosecutor in the office, and he's probably among the top in the state. He's a very, very good prosecutor in the courtroom. So if my family was murdered and they had a suspect, I hate to say this, but I would want him to be the guy prosecuting the case. He's got a very strong presence. He's got a loud voice. He's a massive dude. He's 6'5" or something. And he's very smart. He's sharp. I think ethically and morally, he has some shortcomings, but as far as a prosecutor, he's going to kick Chrystul's ass. And he's going to have a second chair. So he'll have a prosecutor to his left, perhaps his deputy, who was just promoted, and to his right, he'll have the lead detective on the case. And they all cheat, is what I'm told by the defense attorneys, but he's very less obvious about it. So if he cheats, it'll be in pretrial stuff, and he won't be cheating as obvious as Binger and Kraus did. He's gonna be professional, and he's gonna kick ass. He's gonna put Chrystul Kizer in prison. There's no doubt about that.
Now I have one more question, and I would like to talk about Edgecomb, unless you guys have more you want to talk about with Chrystul. But how Chrystul got the gun? Why hasn't anybody been charged for that? Because we all know what Dominic Black went through, and Dominic, he didn't give the gun to Kyle. I mean, actually, the claim is that he just didn't stop Kyle from taking it, but he had no inkling that anything was going to go down. The person who gave Chrystul the gun, to me, it looks like he kind of may have known what she was going to do. But whatever the case, that's a felony and a violation of federal law. And I know, as far as I can tell, nobody's been charged for that.
Yeah, I don't know either. And it would have been in whichever county he physically handed her the gun. So it wouldn't have been a Kenosha County case. Mm-hmm. So I can look into that for you, actually. But I don't know.
Yeah, none of the news articles I've read mention anything about an arrest. My understanding of it was her boyfriend up in Milwaukee that gave her the gun. I think at one point she claimed that it was given to her by the victim. When we call victim here, not in the courtroom here, okay? But that Randall Volar gave her the gun, which in a way is maybe even more insidious because you're shooting at a man with the gun he gave you. But whatever the case, though, I have not heard anything.
Yeah, and who knows? In Milwaukee, they're so terrible. Obviously they're responsible in part for this guy who ran over all these people by asking for a $1,000 cash bond for trying to run over his girlfriend. But hey, will you can you let me share my screen just for a second? And before we jump off this topic, I want to share this document with you guys.
Sure. Although you're not allowed.
Wait, I got to do it. I got to do it, right? No.
I think you should have a share button at the very bottom.
Oh yeah, right, there we go.
Okay, go ahead.
So I just want you guys to be able to see it. This is the first time I'm actually releasing this document. So I think you just have to approve it. Okay, so this is the Supreme Court Office of Lawyer Regulation. So this is the email they told me, where they said, in an attempt to provide a non-confidential explanatory statement in response to your email request, Please be advised that the OLR is investigating the allegations you subsequently raised regarding Attorney Binger. Several individuals presented information to the OLR during or after trial in State v. Kyle Rittenhouse, case number 2020 CF 983. This has been administratively consolidated into one matter, OLR matter 21 MA 1281. Information relating to this matter is confidential, of course. And so following the filing of a complaint or petition, the proceedings and all papers filed with it are public except where expressly provided otherwise in this chapter. So therefore, they're saying, look, we've gotten so many complaints that we're just going to review in totality these things. So, and this was dated January 6th. So just a couple weeks ago. So, and this is Timothy Samuelson. If you look him up, he used to be a circuit court judge. He was a U.S. attorney, and now he's the director of this. And he was appointed by a Republican, and he seems to be fairly conservative. So hopefully there's something that happens from this, because Sean was bringing up the Fifth Amendment violations, pretrial exclusion of evidence violations. At minimum, this should be a public reprimand. They have the option for a private reprimand, which, what does that mean? What accountability is where they send him a paper that says, hey, you screwed up, but we're not going to let anybody know. I mean, so hopefully something happens that's public so people know, hey, if you screw around as a prosecutor, you will face consequences.
All right, thanks. Yeah, and again, just as a reminder, Kenosha County Eye, you really got to subscribe to it. If you're interested in anything with Chrystul Kizer and Dominic Black and Kyle Rittenhouse and all the other massive, huge numbers of high-profile murders that have been going on in that town over the last couple of years, you really should subscribe to the Kenosha County Eye. You get really in-depth coverage. And by the way, you joke about being the gossip blogger, but I have found your information to be far more accurate than any other source. I haven't seen anything coming out of your paper that wasn't ultimately proven to be true. So
appreciate that.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of crazy though, because my response would be to those who calling you a gossip blogger, well, who would you prefer that we go to? What, MSNBC, right?
CNN? And all my haters, I say the same thing. Hey, look, give me two things. One, give me proof that anything I've published is false. Two, tell me the name of your favorite charity, non-abortion related. And if you can give me two, I'll donate $500 to that charity if you can prove something I ever printed was factually incorrect. No one's been able to do that. And I made that offer to T. Claire Binger, and he declined.
And so, by the way, the other profile cases, just really quickly here, Reynoco Vinson went into a bar in Kenosha, shot it up, shot 6 people, killed 3 of them. Almost nobody knows who this dude is. And this happened after the Kyle Rittenhouse case. And I think it's Binger who's going to be handling that, because if you notice, when he was there talking about the...
Oh, that one just concluded.
I'm sorry?
That trial just concluded.
It did?
Last week.
Oh,
yep.
Wow. Okay, tell me.
So he wanted to fire his attorney. He got a public defender, not a staff public defender, but an appointed public defender. So I think 40% of the people who are indigent get a staff public defender, and the other 60% get private attorneys, but the public defender's office reimburses them at a agreed upon rate. So he got a appointed lawyer. He wanted to fire him. He wanted to fire him. He had just a terrible case. He was on video doing it. He shot a guy twice as he was crawling away. It was dead in the water. He went to trial. He tried to say that it was self-defense.
I love those anchor shots.
Oh, yeah, he got his ass kicked by these guys before he pulled out. This was a clear case of he was losing a fist fight, pulled out a gun and just started blasting indiscriminately. Killed 3. Almost. I mean, there was the other 2 that were shot almost got killed themselves.
And some of those that were shot were not even involved in the altercation earlier, right?
Right, exactly. One was a guy who lived upstairs who I think was trying to leave or go get his girlfriend or something.
Right. So sentencing has not been concluded.
No, and sentencing on a case like this in front of Schroeder doesn't matter. So he's got 3 mandatory life sentences, and then 3, I think, 60-year maximums. So if Schrader wanted to be very, very kind, which he will not be, he could allow for the possibility of parole in 20 years. That's the best he could do. And only if you have a liberal governor is parole even possible. And they just paroled 2 dudes in Kenosha that were convicted of first-degree murder, I think 35 years ago. So that's always fun to know that there's going to be convicted homicide people living in your neighborhood, but whatever.
Is Renelko another one that should have probably chose a different judge?
No, I think he had the right judge. If you're going to trial, you definitely want Schrader, 100%. And the DA's office, they don't make up plea offers on crimes that serious.
Right. Okay. What about Jesus Bedrano? And let me get everybody a little heads up. He went in to rape his, what is it, like a 14-year-old cousin?
So this one I can't talk about.
Oh, you can't. Okay. Well, I'll go ahead and talk about it.
Sure.
But Jesus Medrano, he went in to rape his, I guess, like a 14-year-old cousin. She was in a bunk bed, and below her was an 8-year-old. And he brought a machete with him because he figured his parents might try to stop him. They did, and he sliced them up, killed them both, and he did this all in front of his daughter. So, other than that, he was a great guy.
So, Sean,
we've all been there.
Sean, I'm a criminal defense investigator here in Kenosha, so some cases I can't talk about, and I'm sure you can use reason to figure that out.
Now, but can you tell me where we are in terms of, like, has it gone to trial yet?
That case is I think gonna end up being a jury trial is my guess, but I don't think
so it still hasn't been. They haven't.
Yeah, I don't think so.
But so you can see a lot of interesting things going on in Kenosha, Wisconsin.
Well, yeah, and
Wisconsin in general.
Yeah, last year, 2021, we had 15 murders. So I know a few of them were multiple victims. So you're going to have at least, I'm guessing, about 8. There's going to be 8 homicide trials this year, is my guess, that's a lot for Kenosha. I mean, it's 100,000 people.
I was about to say, that's a lot of murders.
Yeah. So if you look at Kenosha's trend for homicides over the last 20 years, it's been some years 0, some years 1, 2, 3, highest 5. Go back 20 years. And then last year was 15. So it was 3 times the highest we've ever had in the last 20 years. Just a really bad year. And I count 15. Kenosha police on their books and what they'll send to the FBI is 14. But the one woman, I believe, was 38 weeks pregnant, and I count that as a homicide 10 out of 10 days. For those of us with children, if your wife was murdered when she was 38 months pregnant, or 38 weeks pregnant, you'd be mourning 2 humans that day. So I count that as a homicide, even though legally it's not.
And by the way, Kimberly Motley, during the bail hearing for Kyle Rittenhouse, complained that they had a person of color who was just given a $2.5 million bail. That was Jesus Medrano. And so her comment was that Kyle Rittenhouse's bail should be raised up to that level because of how heinous he was. While we have a person of color here who's facing $2.5 million bail. Yeah, she didn't tell anybody that the dude sliced up his parents with a machete, and he pre-planned it. So, yeah. I mean, come on, Kimberly.
So
I beg Kimberly a lot.
And I don't know if so one of the federal law, I mean, there's so much to talk about. So just direct me if I get off topic, but Kyle was just added to one of those federal civil suits yesterday. Did you hear that? So John Huber, the guy who gave Schrader the finger, that's Anthony's dad. He sued the sheriff's department, the police department, and 100 John Doe officers, right, in federal court. And the city and the county kind of threw Kyle on the bus. They said, well, why aren't you suing Kyle? And they asked the judge to force the plaintiffs to add Kyle to the lawsuit. So they added him. So Kyle is now a defendant in the civil trial of the estate of Anthony Huber v. Kenosha County, Kenosha City Sheriff, Police, all those people. Which
He'll be
I'm
okay.
not. Yeah, he will. And I was named on a couple of civil lawsuits, and they got dismissed pretty quickly. So,
Is he still using the Levy group out of Chicago? Was it Chicago?
I think so.
I read his lawsuit against the Kenosha County that was going to be issued at the state level, and I read it on one of my shows.
Yep.
It is right out of middle school.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
they even misspelled the name of the state on the title of the
Yeah, I
thing.
saw that. Yeah,
Oh my God. And like in the Declaration of Facts, they wrote fact. Anthony Huber was a hero. Like, who writes this kind of stuff? So and then it gets better. Kimberly Motley, who is Gage Grosskreuz's lawyer, she filed a suit
copied and pasted
and copied like 80% of the suit over to her own, and forgot to change the name in a couple of places. So at the end, she's advocating on behalf of Anthony Huber, but Gage Grosskreutz is your client, not Anthony.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I know that. Now Sean's in shock. He's like, "Oh, come on!" No,
after his testimony, I'm surprised that his cases haven't been dismissed. After his testimony, I'm surprised those cases haven't disappeared.
Well, here's the funny thing. So, I noticed there was a transcript request for Gage's testimony in the Rittenhouse file. So I asked the court reporter who asked it. She gave me the name of a law firm, and it's the city and either the city or the county's lawyer. So they're already getting ready to hand over those transcripts to the court and say, "Hey, this is a dude who admitted he pointed a gun at a 17-year-old before he was shot in the arm, and now he wants." Here's the main thing: is that they're saying that the police department and Kevin Mathewson colluded to deprive these guys of their civil rights, which cannot be shown, cannot be proven, because it just didn't happen. I didn't have any contact with any police officers that night. And, like I said, Johnny, I told you this, when I was an alderman in the city of Kenosha, I was very, very vocal about going against the crooked cops. So the crooked cops that I had encountered, I'm happy to think that I got at least 4 or 5 of them fired because I went after them and I exposed them. So I didn't gain a lot of friends at the police department when I was an alderman. So to infer that me and them were, in cahoots is just, to people in this community who know intimately, they just think it's laughable that me and them were colluding. So I'll probably get deposed, and they're not going to like what they hear from the police and from me, because there's nothing there. It's a nothing burger. And these attorneys who are doing these on contingency basis, which I don't see what other option there was, they're gonna get the losing end of this stick, because they're gonna put in a lot of hours and they're not gonna get any money.
Yeah, they even claimed in Huber's and Grosskreuz's, because again, Kimberly Motley copied essentially like almost all of the contents from Huber's to her own, that the sheriff's county and the police department deputized Kyle and the rest of the gang. Like, no, a deputization is an actual formal ceremony. I mean, you just don't say, "Well, go on out there and do something." That's not deputizing.
You don't get to raise a posse. Yeah.
It's
not the old days.
And and this is the funny thing is, so plagiarizing a lawsuit is not against the rules.
Sure.
Sean will tell you that. Lawyers do that all the time, because the way I look at it,
I do it.
Yeah. If I'm looking, so I sued I did a couple of pro se lawsuits. And what I would do is I would take a very similar lawsuit, one that was successful, and download it, and then, using one of these utilities to transfer it from PDF to, Microsoft Word. And I would just go in there and change some of the facts, and it made me look brilliant. I'm not smart. I just plagiarized off a smart lawyer. And a lot of lawyers do it. And there's no, if somebody's already done it the best, why change? So you can use similar language, and that language, ended up being successful. Why would you not use language that's already worked? So you can't falter for that, but you can say, come on, if you're going to copy and paste, make damn sure you proofread that thing, especially how you spell Wisconsin and all that stuff.
Keep in mind, she's also copying from a lawsuit that was thrown out.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, she wasn't plagiarizing a successful one. But I mean, and of course, the Levy group, they wrote something that was almost satire, so poorly done. I just could not believe it. But if you're interested, Sean, and anybody else, go check out my videos where I actually read them out loud.
Let's take a look at those.
Oh, it's insane, But yeah, at any rate, there is that. So Kyle is being sued now by Anthony Huber, John Huber,
Yep.
in federal court. Okay, so there's this obviously a civil rights deal there that must be taking place, and the fact that Huber's white is not going to play well for that, I wouldn't imagine. I don't know. It just seems kind of crazy, but whatever.
Yeah, I don't. This is the problem. So I sat on the city council for 4 years, and the city has terrible lawyers, but they're going to farm these out to good lawyers. And the problem is these spineless politicians in Kenosha, a lot of times they'll be presented with a settlement agreement. Okay, the attorney will say, hey, they want to settle for $250,000, 150 grand will go to the attorneys and 100 grand will go to the Huber estate. And these idiots might just vote, they just might do it. And I really hope they don't. I hope they fight this, because the city has a reputation of just settling this shit. Once you get a reputation as a government body of settling cases, that encourages and incentivizes lawsuits. So I hope they take a stand and they say, no, we're going to take this to the end, because we don't want people thinking you can just sue us willy-nilly. So if we get the right judge, we should be okay. I don't want my tax dollars going to Anthony Huber's, crazy father. That's for sure.
They can get a commemorative skateboard made of him.
Yeah, exactly. A skateboard, which is not a deadly weapon, right?
Yeah.
And why is his girlfriend of 2 months or whatever, why is she not being charged with obstruction for not turning over the skateboard?
Because I think at that point, you've got to be careful when it comes to things like that. You have to know that they know that was a necessary thing, because generally Kyle was the one who got in trouble, not Huber. So you're destroying evidence that you weren't told is evidence.
Oh, I gotcha. That makes sense.
I think it's also kind of like a perjury. It's hard to prove that, because you almost need the person to admit, yes, I did this. Ha 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 ha. I knew that I shouldn't have done that.
Right.
It's sad it's that way, but yeah, there was a lot of evidence tampering in that trial. But
okay,
I mean, at the end of the day, I don't think the skateboard would have provided much value to either side.
Oh, I think it would have made things a lot quicker, because you could have had John Black walk up there or somebody smack that skateboard's edge on the jury box, and they would have realized Binger's full of shit.
Well, I mean, nobody wants to be karate chopped with a skateboard in the neck. Everybody knows that. I mean,
you never know.
I mean, I would hope they know. I mean, a skateboard absolutely can be deadly. I mean, it's heavy.
It's killed people. I mean,
Yeah.
and I've covered a couple of cases on my own channel of where it happened. A guy got hit in the stomach with one and died. So
if that one blow from the skateboard would have rendered Kyle unconscious or immobile, man, he would have gotten the shit stomped. He would have got his shit stomped for sure. And it would not have been good.
Okay, so let's go ahead and move on. I think the Edgecomb trial.
Sure.
Theodore Edgecomb. Sean, why don't you give us a rundown of what's taking place there?
Well, you don't want to hire his two attorneys. I can tell you that much right now. These guys have been awful. So basically, Theodore Edgecomb was riding his bike, looks like the wrong way into traffic on September 22nd. Jason Clearman was riding in his car as a passenger, and his wife was driving. She almost hits him, but it sounds like because he's driving the wrong way. There were some pleasantries exchanged. They drive off. Theodore follows them, catches up to him. There's some more pleasantries, and then Theodore punches Jason in the face. Theodore rides off. Jason and his wife follow him around the corner. And this is, basically they kind of force him off the road. Jason gets out of his car to confront him, and Theodore shoots him in the face. I mean, that's like the Reader's Digest way of looking at this. This trial has not been very good for him. There's a lot of things he didn't do right. Like, he didn't stick around for the police, and yeah, he fled, but those aren't fatal. You can work around that. It really depends on how you present a case, the evidence you want to show, because there was a lot there to show. Once he rode off, there's no more fight. The fight's done. The fight's over. Now, I know some of you listening may not like that, but yeah, once the guy who punches you in the face runs off, you're done. So instead, they go chase him, and I think rather aggressively come around the corner and almost run him off the road. Yeah, at that point, I think Theodore should have shot. I mean, if I was riding a bike and I got ran off the road, I'm thinking they're coming to kill me, and a car's a deadly weapon. Um, but once Jason's out of the car, is it deadly force at that point? Not yet. That said, though, Theodore's kind of boxed into a corner, kind of at the stairs. It's dark out. As he claims, this guy's screaming racial epithets and supposedly has something in his hand. Well, we know from everybody so far it's testified, they didn't hear anybody screaming, and it didn't look like he had anything in his hands. So that really kind of kills it for Theodore. But yeah, just this trial has been rough. It's been interesting if people want to see how a murder trial should go, how it should be prosecuted. That's been the great part about it. This has also been a great example of what shitty defense work looks like. These guys are unprepared. I mean, if you look at them, I think they hadn't been to trial before. I mean, they're asking questions like it's their first day in mock trial.
Can you
That's
give
really
us
all
some
I got.
examples?
For now.
What, for example, tell us some
Sure.
examples here of what they
Oh.
have kind of screwed up on.
Oh, they've screwed up. I think one of their biggest things was when Jason Clearman's widow testified. She was testifying in a way that I don't know if anybody's seen it yet. I do cover it a little bit. She's asking she answers questions from the prosecutor. You know, is it true that this happened? And she would say no to it. And the prosecutor's taken aback because it's clear she's trying to church things up a little bit. She's trying to paint her husband in the nicest light. You know, she tells the police, and for a while she admitted, yeah, my husband was swearing and being over, you know, he was being aggressive back. But at trial, she's like, oh no, he was nice. He just wanted to go talk to the guy who punched him in the face. Just wanted to talk. Well, it's clear he didn't want to talk. He was drunk and he wanted to fight, which there's nothing wrong with that. But she kept on trying to paint things in a rosier light than necessary. And then the defense got up and they fumbled that. I think they could have gone towards her to say, well, this actually happened the way everybody else has said it has. They didn't. They weren't prepared. When they talked their questions, they didn't remember what they were asking. When they asked a question, they were not forming them properly. There's so many ways they screwed up. It's hard to keep them all correct in my head. The biggest thing, though, was the witness who was in custody because of a material witness warrant, Attorney A, by Ivory Lamar, asked a question saying, you never talked to us. Isn't that right? And he had to admit, yes, I didn't talk to the defense. Well, it comes out that the other attorney, Anik Ahmed, had a paralegal go talk to him. Now, at that point, that's a big fuck up because they just had a misleading question asked in court. And that also shows they were not truthful to the court. They misled the court itself. As an attorney, I've got candor to the court. That's one of my duties. So now they're in trouble. And why does that matter? Because Attorney A and Attorney B, they're working together. That's the same as if it's just one attorney working. They should have known that. Now, do I think anybody's going to get referred for sanctions or anything? No. But you can't go into court and lie like that. And not only that, the jury heard that one. So now the jury heard the judge admonish them. So now the jury thinks they're lying and thinks they're full of shit, which is not going to help you when you're trying to convince at a closing argument, believe my client. It just, when you listen to them, they are not steady. They're not directed. I mean, it sounds like they're writing up their questions and notes as direct testimonies going on. They've got the voice and they sound loud and booming, but they have nothing to back up what they're going after. And honestly, I don't know why they didn't have Theodore plead this out, because based on the way this evidence has been presented, you know, I will say the one point with Jason's wife, they tried to bring up the idea that maybe she took the knife that he had in his pocket and put it away or hid it. they tried to bring that up on cross, and immediately the judge jumped down their throats. You can't offer an allegation like that without any proof. And when they did that, that was when the judge took a dump on them. It's
Foundation.
well, it's not even foundation, but you can't argue facts that aren't supported with evidence.
Mhm.
So it's not even a foundation thing, but they were trying to argue that she did this, and there's no proof that she has done that.
Well, isn't that if you want to raise an alibi defense or you want to raise a defense that it was actually a different perpetrator, don't you have to get permission before to bring that up?
Well, an alibi generally you have to provide in advance because an actual alibi, the state has the right to know what it is ahead of time because
Sure.
it might be legitimate and it might save everybody trouble. But in their case, their argument is, yes, he had a knife, but his wife said, "Oh my God, they're going to find out he had a knife," and shoved it in his pocket and hid evidence. So it's not necessarily an alibi; it's an excuse why nobody found a knife in his hand. And you've got to be able to show some proof that happened. If you just want to make an allegation like that, you can't. This isn't like TV. You have to support them with something. Now, if you want to ask her a couple questions and she can't give you an answer on closing, I could try to paint that in a way that, oh, well, how do we know she did? She couldn't tell us what she did. But they didn't go about it the right way. I mean, it's just, this was not an example of how to do defense work. I will say the prosecution's done very well, though.
Well, I was a little confused on that whole point because
Yeah.
I thought that the pocket knife being in the man's pocket was released. That information was released by the police, which means that she didn't take the knife. It was in his pocket all the time. So what's the truth here?
I bet it was in his pocket. I mean, I've watched this trial now to this point. He did it. He shot the guy preemptively. He had no right to self-defense at this point. I guarantee you the knife was in his pocket.
Yeah.
Just the way this is all panned out, the way this evidence has been presented. Part of their initial argument in their opening was that the police were kind of in a big conspiracy not to find evidence, that there was some camera footage that showed Theodore in the right. Ultimately, the way this whole thing started, they had the computer camera technician come up, and she talked about, I went to like 20 or 30 businesses to find what was there, and we couldn't find anything. So it's not like the police did investigate. It's just they looked and there was nothing for them to find. So it's like I said, it's just multiple things on top of each other. But yeah, the knife was a big one. No witnesses ever saw him have a knife out. So
Right. And
it's
the fact that,
bad.
and again, I've seen these arguments in the comments because I read those, and
Yeah.
the idea, well, he was armed. It doesn't matter. I mean, if the witness or the person who shot him didn't see the knife, he can't claim that
Yeah.
as part of the self-defense deal.
Yeah, the only way he could say is like, "Hey, I got this pig skinner in my pocket, and listen, I'm going to pull it out on you." Unless that's known. Yeah, you're right. Yes, unless it's known, you have to go off of what he knew at the time. And at the time, it's just this big drunk white guy wanted to fight him. And that was
Right.
it.
And it seems extremely unlikely that a person carrying a pocket knife like that is going to pull it out. It's not a really good weapon. And I can certainly see that wanting to fight with fists would be primary for somebody in that situation and not pulling a pocket knife out. I mean, people don't carry those around for attacking people. I mean, you got to get in too close.
No, but he got very close. Jason got close to Theodore, but I've seen a lot of people kind of spur of the moment use what they had as a weapon, and knife is a good weapon to carry.
Well, if you're being attacked, I could maybe see it, but I just pocket knives. I mean, I wouldn't myself. I mean, I would be like, shoot, that thing is just going to get me in a lot of trouble.
Yes.
But whatever the case. So I don't think the pocket knife is an issue here.
No, I don't at this point either.
Yeah. Now, Wisconsin law, and we've covered it very thoroughly because of the Kyle Rittenhouse deal, but the whole thing about provocation, even if Theodore provoked the incident by writing off, he can claim his self-defense rights, can reclaim them.
Yes.
That doesn't mean he gets to, but he can. And of course, if you can reclaim them, you can also lose them depending on what takes place thereafter.
Yeah, I kind of I try to explain to people like if you're at the putt-putt course and the windmill's going, every time that windmill's blocking your shot, you've lost self-defense. but every time it's opened up and you can shoot the ball through, you've regained it. It's constantly changing, and it can change very fast. It can change which Theodore's case, it changed in a matter of seconds. He punched the guy. He didn't have any right to do it. He had no right to self-defense. But as soon as he got off, seconds later, he's on his bike riding. He regained it, but he has to have the proper levels of force applied to use self-defense. So, yeah, it's
Right.
just like
And
that.
And of course, just about every state has a rule or a statute that states that you can't provoke somebody into an argument for the purposes of shooting them. And what's interesting about this is that one can claim that he provoked somebody into a fight knowing he could use his gun if he needed it. So in other words, he got a lot braver and basically didn't care about what kind of provocation he gave the other person, because he could always shoot him if the guy went after him. That's kind of tough to analyze.
Yeah, I understand where you're going with that, but I also think in Theodore's position, it's a couple of old white people in a car. He punches one of them. I bet he thought, screw it, I'm not going to hear from them again. I don't necessarily think he thought, oh, if it goes bad, I'll shoot him. I think he just thought, the reason why he picked the fight in the first place, he saw somebody he thought he could get the jump on.
Well, I'm just thinking of it along the lines of he carries a gun, probably habitually. And I think that in the back of his mind, he now can be much more aggressive with people because he can actually take care of the situation if it gets out of hand. And so if he never did carry a gun around at all, would he have still punched Jason? I'm not sure.
I think he probably would have. I mean, he strikes me as that type of guy. So, I mean, he does come across as an asshole the way he did all this, especially he was riding his bike into traffic incorrectly. And then he got offended that how dare somebody almost run me over after I try to ride my bike like Helen Keller. So I think for a lot of people think that way, but Theodore strikes me as a very impulsive person. I don't know if he thought that far ahead.
Interesting. So in your mind, based on what you know, does he have a valid self-defense claim?
No, not at this point. I mean, at first I like to think he did. I was going to give him the benefit of the doubt. But yeah, after this has all come out and nobody's seen a weapon, you might be able to argue if, let's say Jason actually was screaming and, dropping N-bombs the whole time, maybe. But if none of that's happened, yeah, he just shot him and that was it.
Yeah.
So
I was a little bit leaning towards guilt earlier on. I'm now probably more emboldened than I was before. I kept an open mind because let's face it, you see a blurry video and you can see anything in that video you want to see. And I didn't really have much else to go on. Evidence starts to unfold. And especially the more recent one where they actually show him punching,
oh yeah,
Jason.
the refined one.
Yeah. I'm starting to lean very heavily towards a guilt here. What about you, Kevin? Any ideas?
I just looked this case up the other day and watched the video. There's a lot of aggravating circumstances. The one that sticks out to me is the fact that this dude went home and hid his bike in the basement and went about his business. If I had to shoot somebody, if one of us had to shoot somebody in self-defense, I think the first thing you'd want to do is call the police, right? Hey, this is my name is Kevin Mathewson. I just shot a guy who was coming at me with a knife. Send an ambulance, send the police. But when you leave, and don't alert authorities, it's kind of a consciousness of guilt where your behavior shows that what you did was wrong, and if you thought
you look guilty,
if what you thought you did was legal and just, then stick around, wait for the police to come. Well, that would have increased his chances, I think, enormously. He'd still have a bad case, but
sure he would. But I always think in response to that, because I've had clients who they've ran and they've been involved in things, and I've asked them, and I'm not sure. I think a valid argument in the response to that, let's say he was justified, would be, who the hell's going to believe me? I mean, I don't blame people sometimes thinking, oh my God, nobody's going to believe this whole situation happened. I'm going away and it's, and running out of town and hiding, laying low. I get that. Fleeing to Kentucky, not so much. Certainly his attorney's nonsense about him being on a vision quest to find the sage attorney in Wisconsin who would defend him. Yeah, that. Nobody's going to buy that. I'm not buying that. So, yeah, I don't like it when they do use flight of circumstantial evidence. I don't feel like that should, innocent people don't run. Well, innocent people do a lot of things. And I don't like that argument that, an innocent person only acts a certain way. I mean, innocent people take the fifth. Innocent people don't want to necessarily talk to the cops. So I always get a little, I always say take that with a grain of salt, this idea that, innocent people don't run or innocent people want to clear things up. I just think there's a lot of times where a lot of people, if they are involved in something, don't want the police to be involved, just want to get away from it and call it good.
Yeah.
Right. And even among, there's a lot of people who are very pro Kyle that are on my channel. But you know what? Kyle didn't call 911. Kyle, he tried to turn himself into the police, but he didn't do everything perfectly. And I wouldn't expect Theodore Edgecomb to do everything perfectly either. So I actually downplayed the importance of the fact that he took off to Kentucky. My feeling about it is that whatever, I want to know what the evidence is that occurred that night regarding the actual shooting. What happened before, what happened after doesn't really mean as much to me. But a lot of people don't feel that way. And the very same people who are claiming now that, he did flee the state, whatever, were
crossed state lines.
He crossed state lines, are now claiming, they've switched their sides, haven't they? And that's what bothers me the most is, at least have a consistent argument. So.
Yeah, but I guess I'll say that's something I've come to realize at the end of the day, we're all hypocrites at some point too. So if it's not this, we'll be a hypocrite about something else. But yes, I do think it's very interesting. The same people who have opinions on this, a lot of them have different opinions on Kyle.
And by the way, Theodore Edgecomb's lawyers were wanting the judge to throw out what? The word victim. Yes. And we're upset that the judge allowed the use of the term victim in the court proceedings. And a lot of these very same people were outraged that Judge Schroeder threw out the word victim.
Well,
go ahead.
And I think, though, to be fair, once people learned, wait, that doesn't happen all the time. And I think once, like I said, I think Kyle was a great example for people to learn how sausage is made. How these trials go. I wish I could get cases where judge, I don't want him to refer to him as a victim. I get laughed at bringing that up because it never happens. There are some limited jurisdictions where courts generally take that look. I think there's a couple places in California that are very big on it, but otherwise, no, most of the time it's victim, 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 victim. So I think that was a great thing to happen. And, people were mad, but then when people realized, wait, this is how it always goes, I think that did change a lot of minds. So in this case, I think a lot of people were concerned, why isn't this guy the victim? And I think the judge's logic and reasoning in this one was wrong. He's not the victim so you can prove it. I just think in this case, they were able to prove it very quickly.
Yeah, I think that when their own favored son was on this, facing, prison, I think that's when they realized, oh, wait, victim, I guess, is kind of prejudicial, isn't it?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes, everybody likes to say they're, all the decarceration supporters, Cal needs to go away forever. But yet they don't want people being incarcerated or imprisoned.
Right.
But, he's different.
Yeah, my view of what took place that night with Edgecomb was that he basically told his wife, here, pull over. I'm going to kick his ass, right? And I have a feeling that there is a power dynamic between those two where she was not going to be in a position to tell him no. Especially he's had a couple of beers.
And do we know if she had been drinking too?
I don't know.
Well, So at trial, she said she had a glass of wine, which, in my experience as a defense attorney, I only had one beer, officer. It's probably she had a couple more. She was probably
One or two beer story, right?
yes. She was like I said, she was trying to church things up, and I get she wants to do that. She's trying to help in her own way. I bet she was probably close to the legal limit, but it was probably the case of the least drunk person driving.
Yeah, and I think that she pulled over simply because he told her to, and
Sure.
she probably doesn't have the gumption to tell her husband no. And I've seen a lot of this power dynamics. She seems to come from I don't know if she's American born, but a lot of cultures have it where, hey, look, if your husband tells you to do something, you just do it. And she might be coming from that sort of cultural background.
She also could have said, "Hell yeah, Seabass, kick his ass."
Oh yeah, I mean that's
Very
possible.
likely.
I'm not sure I believe that's what happened. I'm just going by the bet. If I was a betting man,
Sure,
my
I
feeling
agree.
about it was that she's basically said, well, okay, and so she pulls up behind it. I don't think, and I've looked over the video many times, I don't think that she ever tried to endanger Edgecomb with her car. It looks to me like she just pulled in behind him to let him out of the car to go and settle things. And
I don't think she meant to run him down, but I think she pulled up on him really close. And let's say you were riding your bike along, you're probably thinking to yourself, "Oh shit, this car's going to hit me." So I mean, I think there was, yeah. I don't think she tried to run him down, but I think a reasonable person standing there in the bike lane would have got out of the way. And had you not known what this was all about, and you just watched that video, you'd say, "Well, that wasn't good." And I'm sure if a cop had seen that, he would have immediately hit his lights and gone over there. So,
yeah. So again, a little bit of alcohol probably played a big role in here. But to me, at least the beginnings of this didn't seem all that unusual. Somebody jaws off at you, they punch you, you pull up behind them, you're going to settle this. That's typically like the American way. People are saying, well, he should have just called 911. It's your wife sitting next to you. I mean, I could fully understand him saying, I'm not going to be a big wuss and call 911. I have to show something here. I have to defend my honor a little bit. A guy just punched me. I'm not going to let him get away with that. Right. I can see it.
Well, and and I think me and you may have talked about that a little bit after one of my videos. Yeah, he got punked. He had to do something about it. And yeah, would I have hurt pride too? Sure. But that's, I mean, like when I turned 18, my dad kind of took me to the side. He said, remember, from now on, like if you want to get into a fight, you'd either be prepared to go to prison over it. People don't adults get treated differently. When I was in college, I got into a bunch of fights, and thank God nothing went bad. But, as you get older, if you're trying to get into a fight, great, you're going to get into a fight for what gain, especially in this case. Yeah, your wife might think, wow, he's not a pussy, but best case scenario, you might get a misdemeanor charge out of it. Worst case scenarios, you're a felon. You got to fight a felony case that you might beat. You get hurt real bad, or you might get killed. So, that's why when I mentioned it, this isn't worth it. I mean, when you're an adult, getting into fights in public is kind of dicey because you might run into a guy who carries a gun and just doesn't give a shit. And once that happens, there's no going back from it.
Kevin, you've been quiet for a little while. Any thoughts on this?
I think he's going to be found guilty, but it's not 100%. I mean, having a drunk guy chasing you. Nate posted something in the chat about blood on the window. What? I saw that too. What the hell? Do you guys know what that was supposedly from? So I was reading the criminal complaint. The police found blood on the window that they said was almost all the way down, but wasn't quite all the way down. The passenger side.
I'm not sure if there was.
So I don't know if
that coming up.
The defendant punched the complaining witness, alleged victim, whatever, in the face, and he bled, or not. But I mean, I'm thinking this: if somebody punched me, I'd probably want to chase him. You know, you
Sure.
don't. You mentioned that's funny. You mentioned not wanting to look like a little bitch in front of your wife or girlfriend or whatever.
Yeah.
That played into it too. But at what point? I mean, at one point, can you shoot somebody or not when it's dark and maybe you can't see if the guy's got something in his hand?
Mhm.
I know that cops would get away with that.
Oh, I
If
think
he was a
so.
police officer and some drunk guy was running at him, he'd have a license to kill in that condition. So I don't necessarily like how police officers are treated so much differently from civilians. I mean,
Yeah.
we both deal with the same threats, right?
That's like another topic.
Right,
Oh,
right.
and then there's qualified immunity, which is an even bigger mess.
Oh yeah. So yeah, but I mean, in this specific case, I think definitely he's going to be found guilty. But I mean, there's no way to put yourself inside this guy's head. But when you
No.
put everything together, I think he didn't have the legal right to use deadly force in this situation.
And one thing I should mention is that, you know, I know that you're a lawyer, but people watching this, the laws change from state to state. Be very careful about taking anything any of it say as some sort of like advice or something like that. For example, in North Carolina, the very fact that Theodore Edgecomb punched Jason, that's it. It's over. That's guilt. I mean, you're going to prison because North Carolina is a what they call a any provocation state. So you have to be blameless. So even if you call a person any kind of word that's likely to provoke a reaction, since you're not totally blameless in what took place, you lose your right to self-defense. And that's because I think a lot of southern states are very polite states, and so a true gentleman would never initiate something that would cause something like this to go down. So I did a video on that where I read off articles written on these different ideas of provocation and how wildly they vary from state to state. In some states, you're really well protected, and Wisconsin is kind of one of those. Your chances of being able to get off on a self-defense claim are much stronger, but in some states, forget it.
Well, even worse, there's states like Ohio where here's the self-defense law. If you look up the Ohio Revised Code, you don't have a duty to retreat. That's it. The rest of it's case law. So have fun figuring out all of that without going to a law library. So
wasn't it Ohio that had the burden of proof on the defense for quite a long time and then changed it recently?
It did, but a lot of courts still force the state to disprove it. But that got changed a couple of years ago.
Right. I think you're the last state to do
that.
Right.
Yes. And a lot of things in Ohio are very different from the rest. There are a lot of laws that Ohio has that are different from every other state. So,
yeah.
Sean, are you more of a conservative guy or more of a liberal guy?
Well, I mean, I guess I'll just first say I agree with Johnny. Yeah, nothing I've given you here's legal advice. Although I don't really think I've given legal advice.
Yeah.
But it depends on the day. I'm rather right leaning, but you get a couple of drinks into me, and I'm throwing Pinochet out of the helicopter. Just depends on the day.
Well, yeah, I'm a conservative guy, but where I disagree from the right a lot is defendants' rights. I'm pro-defendant, and it seems like a lot of conservatives just want to be pro-state.
I think that for a lot of people, that's because for a long time, being for law and order and it was the idea that you supported the government acting in a way to protect society as a whole. But then as you get older, you see the police abuse power, things like that. That I think for a lot of people, that does change their minds. Like I said, I think for a lot of people who may have been on the right watching the Rittenhouse trial, oh, well, I know, my prosecutor, he can't do that to me. Like, you want to bet? Just the cops won't screw with me. You want to bet? I mean, like Daniel Shaver, he had his hands up and they made him play Simon Says for his life. And then what happened? He walked.
Oh, that was horrible.
Yeah,
which was that the guy that got shot in the hallway with the AR-15? Oh, that cop, that cowardly piece of shit cop.
And then he got disability for it was traumatic.
Right.
Now that's one of those cops that's he watches all this propaganda, and a lot of it's right-wing propaganda that if you're a cop, you know, people are going to try to kill you, and
You're at war.
it's dangerous.
Mhm.
Come on, being a cop is still a pretty very, very safe occupation. And so, you know, the guy did everything he was asked to do, and this cop just wanted to pull the trigger. He did. He was scared of his own shadow, and he got away with it. That one really pissed me off.
Oh, and I think that's more of as you get. I think what the internet has helped with the right as far as kind of pushing it a little more libertarian at times, learning, you know, how the state governs things, how they handle stuff. So I think it's getting there. I think it's getting there overall. I mean, I just say, Kevin, I mean, how many lawyers you know have a rocket launcher in their office?
One, you.
I just say, so yeah, it's you know, overall, I mean, I'd like to see a lot less government in the world, but you know, I still think, you know, like I'm happy Kyle did what he did. I mean, you know, nothing warmed my heart more than watching him center punch those guys. You know, that's why, I mean, if you watch my videos before, what I was I don't think you can display on live streams, but you know, I'm clearly big Second Amendment guy. But yeah, overall, I think it's, you know, you really learn from being in court how much the rights of others really, you know, get screwed with and get trampled on. I've seen that a lot, and I've learned about that a lot. You know, I mean, I've had guys who, yeah, I know they got into a chase with the cops, and their family called me and they hired me. I go see him in the morning, and you know, yeah, he got into a car accident, but everything was fine, and he's there in the jail cell, completely beat to shit. And I'm like, "What happened?" And he said, "You're not going to believe me, but these cops beat my ass, and they took me to the jail." I mean, that happens all the time.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, I would recommend those that are interested in this kind of angle. I mean, the discussion about
sure,
police brutality. Good Luck America. Rick Gore, former cop, he's been at it for a long time. I think he was like a cop in Sacramento area for like 30 something years, and his channel is largely devoted now to basically criticizing police who overstep their bounds.
Mhm.
And some of the stuff I see on his channel, I'm thinking, you have got to be kidding me. At what point, where did this person become trained as a police officer? You know, and yeah, so if those of you who are interested in seeing this kind of thing from a policeman, I mean, he's a former cop, and it's a really good channel. He, in my opinion, he kind of takes it too far with some of the language and some of his insinuations. But hey, you have to kind of put up with it, you know. But yeah, Good Luck America, Rick Gore. Are you familiar with it, Kevin? No, I mean you'd
I've
like
never
his
heard of him.
channel because he's all about exposing police officers doing wrong. But he's not like one of these auditor types, you know, if you know what I mean.
Well, in this society, I think you have two extreme groups. You have the group that thinks all cops are terrible and they should all go to prison and they're bad and this and that. But then you have the other group that all cops are angels, and if you go after one of us, you're going after the all of us. I'm right in the middle. The good cops, which are the majority, should be. I mean, they got a tough job. I mean, I wanted to be a cop my whole life. I was a dispatcher for 5 years and learned that being a police officer is not glorious. It's not on cops where you're chasing bad guys and finding dope. I mean, you're writing reports all the time. You know, you're dealing with dead bodies and traffic accident fatalities where you're looking at dead children and I mean, it's not all glamorous. So it's a tough job that not everybody can do, right? But when you do locate and identify the bad ones, I just hate to see the good cops defend the bad ones. It's like, what are you doing? Distance yourself from that shit, right? But you know, they just want to do the whole, you mess with one of us, you mess with all of us, you know. And you know, in Kenosha, you know, our fire department, it's like you had one guy charged with felonies for choking another firefighter at a softball game over they were banging the same girl. You know, they made him, you know, the judge made him misdemeanors. You got a cop or a firefighter who, you know, got arrested for soliciting a prostitute. You had another one who beat his wife 4 different occasions, admitted to it, and then he's being investigated for sexual assault. And it's like, I go after these firefighters because they should be, and they all have their jobs still, right? It's like they don't get disciplined severely enough. So now all the firefighters hate me. It's like, come on. It's like you can't expect, that type of behavior to just go unnoticed and unpublished. But of course, then I get suspicious of the ones who protect, the bad ones. It's like, wait a second, is this guy protecting his buddy because he's doing bad shit too? It's just it just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Oh, and this firefighter who beat his wife 4 times while he was going through court, and of course he got a deferred prosecution agreement, Sean. Which they do for most.
Oh yeah, it'd be nice to get those for everybody.
So the state licensing board, they suspended his EMT license. So he could be a firefighter, but he can't treat patients. He treated 72 patients while his license was suspended because he never told his boss. And I asked his boss, hey, I got a tip that his EMT license was suspended. Can you check on that and call me back? I'd like to talk to you about it. Never heard back. Oh yeah, it was suspended. So he got 1 day suspension for the EMT license, treating patients without a license, and then he got 4 days suspension for beating his wife, and he's still under investigation from the sheriff's department for sexual assault of his own daughters, who I think are either foster or stepdaughters. But I expose that, and then the good firefighters, they don't like me, and it's weird.
The antithesis of this is Sheriff Grady Judd out of Florida. I don't know, you might have seen some of his press conferences, but I've never seen a sheriff go after his own men like this. He had one of his deputies who didn't put, I think it was like $500 into evidence. So he had collected $500 off a victim.
Oh, I remember watching that.
Evidence. Yeah, okay. And then there was a couple other deputies that they were wanting to pitch the money in to cover it because they just wanted the problem to go away, right? He puts all 3 photos of all 3 in front of him and just tears them up, and I was thinking, whoa, here's a sheriff who does not protect his crew if they do wrong.
And that was, I thought he went a little too far, so with the cop, Chauvin, I thought from the beginning that he's the type of cop that if there would have been no bystanders there, George Floyd would have lived, because he had that attitude because he was a veteran cop, probably got away with anything he wanted to. I'm the police. You're telling me to lift my knee up? No, just because you said it, I'm not going to, because I decide what I do. I'm the police. I'm in charge here. You're not in charge. So it's kind of like a, battle of attrition where the cop says, I'm keeping my knee right where it is because I'm in charge. And but the other 3 guys, you really expected the guy that was on FTO, field training officer program, is going to tell his boss.
He's a week into it.
Yeah, it's like it's crazy. And same thing as, if there's 4 officers on a drug bust and Officer A takes the $500, the other 3 are just going to assume, okay, he's going to put it in evidence. Why is it my fault? Because that guy's a thief or whatever. So, yeah, I mean, the guy, he should have waited until all the facts came out before he roasted all of them like that, because, there's a chance it was just the one guy who actually physically put the money in his pocket. But yeah, they just wanted to pay it back. So they, I
actually commented on that in the thread saying, I think the other guys are really not bad guys. They just didn't want this to go any further.
Right.
And so I get it. They did wrong, but I mean, I would think I might have done something like that, right? Like, we're going to go get fired unless we come up with the money. Well, all right. You pull the money out, you just hope that everything's going to be fine, and it didn't. But whatever the case.
Yeah, I get that. They're, trying to make the till even, but if they're willing to do that to cover for that, that brings up then, well, we're just trying to nip it in the bud here. Well, what else would they look over? And that's where I think draws an issue about their. But yeah, otherwise, yeah, I've worked jobs before where if the money was short, it's like, sure, I'll help my buddy out to make sure it's square. But when it comes to something like that, they're also then condoning it because, like, oh, it would stay here. And, that's where I think it sucks, but sometimes it's got to go all the way like that. So, I mean, if I had learned that they had paid money like that to help cover it up and they were on trial for something, oh, you sure as shit know I'd be making light of that. They help cover up.
There is a point maybe where they maybe didn't do something that was so terribly wrong, but now they're in too deep. And
Yes.
now they have to just keep going along. I
yeah.
can see it happening.
Oh, I can see that too. Yeah. Once you're, there's no part way in on that. You're either in or out. So, also, I apologize. I ramble a little bit. So,
What for what?
well, I have a tendency to do that. I've been warned in court. So, and sometimes I felt like I had so far.
Well, to be honest, I brought you on because I wanted you to talk at length. So
Well, okay. I just want to make sure.
At no point did I ever think, "Oh, I wish he would stop." No, I mean that's the reason why I wanted you on, because they hear me enough.
Sure.
They're probably sick to death and tired of listening to me. So it's good that we have somebody else on here who can give us some different views. I don't know if Kevin is still with us here, but at any rate, it looks like he stepped out for momentarily here. The Edgecomb deal, what do you think is going to happen ultimately? You think he's going to get convicted?
Yeah, I think he's going to get convicted. I think I said it in the recap I did. The window of opportunity to score that big home run, to score that knockout punch, is really closed at this point. I mean, I think if they were going to make something big happen, it was going to have to be when the widow testified. But I think even if you had Johnny Cochran up there, I don't think there was much to gain from her. So really, it's going to come down to his testimony. But I don't know if the jury's going to believe it.
Do you think that this could make an imperfect self-defense? That he overreacted?
I think he would have to admit that he overreacted like that. And then I think because the state automatically went up to the intentional homicide and they, from what I understand, dismissed the reckless, there's nowhere for this to go. They would have to the defense could ask for a lesser included, but I don't know if the court would grant it. Once again, this is one of those deals where his attorneys have pissed off the judge, so the judge may just say no on principle.
That's unfortunate. I mean,
yeah. Oh, yes. His attorneys have dug the hole even deeper. So, yeah, I think they're out. They're out of. I think there might be one or two exit ramps left, and I don't know if they're going to be able to get to them.
So you don't think that that lesser charges are going to be offered to the jury?
I don't think so, because he's going to have to come in there and say, yes, I did it. I didn't really have it. Like, he's going to have to come in and basically admit to all that. I don't think he's going to do that. I mean, based on this and the way his attorneys are going, I don't think that's going to happen. I think at this point, the prosecution is probably not inclined to cut them any slack when it comes to that. And I don't know if the judge would allow it.
What makes me nervous about this trial is did you see where one of the witnesses said that the paralegal identified herself as a police officer?
I brought that up earlier.
That stuff happens to me a lot where I can't be more clear when I talk to people. My name is Kevin Mathewson. I'm a private investigator. I work for Attorney Sean, potentially criminal, on the matter of State v. Johnson. I'd like to talk to you if you're willing to. You do not have to. Is that something you're willing to do? But then later they'll say, "Oh yeah, some guy was really, intimidating me," and
he looks like a cop.
Yeah. At the end of the day, my life doesn't change if my client gets a good outcome or not. I'm just there to try to be ethical and get information. So if somebody denies an interview for me, it's like, all right, no problem. In some cases, I'm like, well, I didn't really want to drive to that guy's house and talk to him anyways. But, you have these people who say, oh, yeah, it was a cop who called me. Well, did they say they were a cop? Well, no. So that stuff always makes me so nervous. So I always wear a body cam. I try to record conversations.
That's a good idea.
Yeah. If possible, I like to put everything in writing. I'll text somebody and I'll put a copy of my, license and my business card on there. So there's no ambiguity. I am not a police officer. I'm a defense investigator, so, and then they went from this big, impersonating a police officer to, oh no, yeah, I guess she didn't say she was a police officer. I just figured she was. And it's like, that shit makes me nervous when that happens.
Well, the thing is, I think even from the court standpoint, the fact that they didn't end up focusing on that and having her take the stand as a witness.
Right.
I think the judge, if this was any other trial, would have said, okay, well, this witness is a moron. He really doesn't know what was going on.
Right.
Because that happens a lot. But when it was coupled with the idea that one of the attorneys misled the jury and misled the court, and these two guys weren't on the same page on top of every other fuck up they'd done so far. That's why the judge got mad. But no, I think that wasn't really a non-issue. I mean, I've had that happen before at trial where they said, your police officer came and talked to me, and I'm like, what do you mean, my police officer? And once again, it's just people not being intelligent about how they describe it. So I don't think that was as big a deal. It was really the attorneys that have caused all the problems.
Oh yeah. Well, Johnny, thanks for having me, man. I gotta go because I got a honey-do list.
Oh.
Okay. Hey, thanks for joining on, Kevin.
Pleasure meeting you. I'm gonna follow you on YouTube if you want to return the favor. I'd be happy.
Sure.
But I look forward to talking to you again. And Johnny, thanks for having me, man.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
Take care.
Hope I see you around, Kevin. Pleasure to meet you.
Sean, you guys have a great night.
Yep.
And weekend.
Thanks.
Okay, so we do have a question from Scrappy. Could someone address jury nullification and the possibility in this trial?
Okay. I have to be, as an attorney and officer of the court in the state of Ohio, I do not condone the concept of jury nullification. I can only tell you as a juror, you are given instructions to follow and that you agree to follow them. What I can tell you is that if you do not follow those rules, technically you're not following orders of the court and you are breaking your oath. What I can tell you from a legal standpoint is people as jurors have not been prosecuted for not following that oath. That is not a endorsement of jury nullification in the state of Ohio, in case the Supreme Court of Ohio is watching this.
Right. And
I just have to
you
say
can, I think, comment on maybe
the concept
whether you
of it,
think
yeah.
it'll happen.
Oh, yeah. Now, with that being said, I said that slightly in jest, but for example, if I brought up the concept of jury nullification at a trial, holy cow, that would be a very bad day for me. You're not allowed to bring that up in court. Some states do have a fully informed juror act. I think it's 2 of them, New Hampshire and another one, where the jurors are actually told you can vote however you want. Nobody can stop you. And that's the real truth. It could be a Nicholas Cruz, the guy down in Florida who shot up the school. He could have gone to trial and you could have sit there and said, nope, not guilty. And you could have agreed, you can vote however you want ultimately. You can't ever be charged with breaking your oath. You can't ever be charged for not voting in a court. You're allowed to reach your own verdict. You just say, I'm just not convinced. In jury nullification, yeah, that could happen. If there's a juror who feels there's a racial component they want to do or a political message they want to get across, oh yeah, they could say not guilty and sit there and deadlock the jury. I don't think you would get all 12, but he could easily get 1 or 2.
That's all it takes, to get at least a mistrial.
And I think they would retry this again. I don't think they would let this one go, given the amount of time and effort they put into it.
Yeah, and now as a juror, what if you are heard using, for example, elements that are you're not supposed to use? For example, the judge says you cannot take into account blah, 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 but in your deliberations with the rest of your jurors, you clearly are. What's the issue there?
Well, I mean, like if you're bringing up like, hey, I guess are you asking like, we need to get this for racial justice? Like if somebody said that in the jury room, is that what you're getting at? Okay. I mean, I would say if you're a juror and you actually had a problem with that, you'd want to bring that up to the court and say, look, this guy's being a lunatic. But absent it being in a prejudicial way, like I know in a couple of cases lately out of I think it was Oklahoma where a guy's on death row, or I think it's Texas where supposedly one of the jurors was overheard saying, I'm glad we convicted that N-word, or I think it was, fuck that Jewish guy, I think is what they said. Yeah, those could eventually bring juror misconduct in on an appellate level, but generally what the jury decides is what they decide.
So you can't throw a juror off because he's done something like that.
Well, if I found out about it and heard about it, I'd probably ask for them to get excused because, especially if they're prejudicial to my client, if they're saying, oh, well, this victim's, if they're being racist towards the victim one way or another, I'm certainly not going to, I'll be fine with that guy sticking around, but a court's going to kick them out because they're not being fair and impartial. But it could happen. But if the juror just happens to sit there and says, sorry, you haven't convinced me, I don't believe it's enough, I think it was self-defense. Nope, I don't think he did it. channels
Okay,
look
I don't know
different than
what that
his.
means to you. I'm
Yeah,
not.
I'll take a
I'm not
look.
sure what that refers to.
Well, there's an issue too if you type in potentially criminal because my channel's kind of new. Anybody who
Oh,
has the words potentially criminal in their thing,
yeah.
I might change the name. I don't know. I got to
Yeah,
work
you
on
don't
that.
know how many booze ads my followers would get when they type in Johnny Walker Dread.
Oh, I
You know?
bet. I bet I'm going to start getting them too. But yeah, jury nullification can happen. It's been around actually. There's a it started back in England. It's like 1650s. A jury did not come to a verdict. And up until that point, the judge actually jailed them until they came up with the right verdict. And the court said, no, the jury can come up with a verdict as they wish. So, yeah, you could catch somebody on video doing it, admitting to it, and a jury could say not guilty, and that's it. There's nothing to stop them, really. There's nothing to stop you from doing that as a juror. Now, if you have that in your mindset, obviously you have to lie to get onto a jury, but yeah, if you want to get on a jury, you can do that and just say, nope, not guilty, and sit there. And that's it. There's nothing you can do.
Okay. Well, you know what? We've been at it for quite a while.
Yeah.
I think I've got other things to hammer on. Why don't you go ahead and put a pitch in for your channel and anything
Sure.
else that you maybe even your own law firm or whatever?
Thanks. Yeah. So once again, my name's Sean Martin. I'm an attorney. I'm in Cleveland, Ohio. I do criminal defense work. That's it. I do a lot of other stuff. You know, if you pay me enough, I will do a divorce. I hate doing those. But if you're in Ohio and you have questions, you know, I've been all over the state of Ohio, so that's not really an issue. I do a lot of criminal work. I've handled it all. So if you want that expertise, you want to talk to me about it, my website is SeanPMartinLaw.com. Be careful. There is another Sean Martin in the state of Ohio who actually is an attorney. So make sure you use the P because there's another guy. I've gotten a lot of mail problems from
You
that.
could type that into the chat
Yeah.
button in
Oh,
there
sure.
if you like. And also your channel. You have a
Yeah.
YouTube channel.
Yeah.
And
So my channel is called Potentially Criminal. I try to cover and focus on a lot of criminal defense issues. Right now I'm doing Theodore Edgecomb's trial. I tried to stream it yesterday afternoon for the first time. That was interesting. Try to recap it every day. And yeah, just if you want to see some insight on I try to focus on those issues. I know other attorneys focus on things in pop culture and whatnot as well, but I like to focus on the criminal stuff. That's usually enough in this world for it.
okay.
Thanks for having me on, Johnny. I appreciate it.
Oh, yeah, no problem. We should do more of this.
Oh, yeah. Be happy to.
Absolutely. And then what you want to do is kind of learn how to stream on your end as well.
Yeah.
Then, you know, a lot of things you can do with that. At any rate, I'm Johnny Walker Dread. I have over 300 videos on the Kyle Rittenhouse, well, the Kenosha shootings. I'm going to be doing a lot of Chrystul Kizer stuff coming up. And I'm going to move a lot towards the area of gun control. I've got a new video series coming out on dumb arguments put out by the gun grabbers. Actually, it's going to be dumb arguments about gun control, but 90% of them will be from the gun grabbers. And another video I'm just going to be pushing out here, I'm going to be covering the new code that City of San Jose has implemented to basically require gun owners to carry liability insurance and to pay a fee to the city for the privilege of having a gun. And I'm going to read the actual municipal code. It's a riot.
I've looked at that one too. That one, yeah, that one's very interesting to look at.
Oh yeah. So be on the lookout for that coming up. And I will let everybody go and thank you for joining in.
All right. Have a nice night, everybody.
Take care.